So, the end of the economy starts with the death of lumber, and this is something that I have been trying to share on this channel for quite some time. Many of you know that I work at a lumber yard. I do retail sales for a living. I have been calling out the lumber industry incredibly accurate for close to a decade now, essentially since I started on YouTube over 7 years ago. And here we are again, sharing in the experience of what it was that I was talking about back in 2019 with massive mill curtailments and what that can mean for the economy, for the economy going forward. Something that I saw today was yet another mill pulling production off the market. Now, I'm surprised I missed this one, but it was announced yesterday. And here it is, almost, what was it, 100 million board feet of lumber they're going to pull off the market, off production. Essentially, that's equivalent to about 900 rail cars, just to kind of give you an idea on how much lumber that really is. And that's an amazing amount of lumber, considering when I look at what a lumber package would take in order to build a house, it's really not that much lumber considering what a rail car can hold. We're talking a lot of homes worth of lumber. But they're not the only ones. There's mill curtailments being announced everywhere. West Fraser, announced a mill curtailment of OSB, and I believe that one was to the tune of almost 1 billion square feet between two different mills. One of them that they had shut down, that they had planned on going back into operation again, that they are deciding to extend the curtailment on that particular mill, along with another one that they have announced recent curtailments with. And combine those two together, it's close to 1 billion square feet of OSB that they're going to be pulling off the market or off production. That is an insane amount of lumber or plywood. This is the sheathing that goes on the house before all the siding and windows and doors and all that other stuff goes on. You have the lumber, which is all the 2x4s, 2x6s, and everything that kind of builds like the skeleton of the building. And then you have the skin that goes on the outside. This is the OSB or the plywood or the sheathing, and this stuff is coming into massive mill curtailments and production slowdown, if not complete inventory pull off the market. I have been sharing this for a while. This is a sign of the death of the economy. If you just watch carefully, if this does not return, there is no way that there is going to be an availability of bringing any new homes to the market in any kind of reasonable or efficient or cheap manner. It's going to be very expensive going into the future. And you can see that taking place now with just these mill curtailments that have taken place in the last few days. It's in combination with all the mill curtailments that I have been talking about for over a year now that have led up to this, and it's going to get worse going into the future, I can tell, if you just don't have any kind of real hope to get new starts. If the builders aren't there, then there's not going to be new starts. If there's no new starts, then there's no reason to produce all that lumber, and the mills see that. It's not just one mill. This is mills, or the mills in the Pacific Northwest. This is from east to west coast this has taken place. From British Columbia down to the southern part of the United States. There is no corner of this market that isn't getting hit by this. And as much as I try to share this information with a lot of people, what I find very puzzling it is how I'm able to so accurately call this stuff out so many times over the years, to have people say, yeah, it's highly accurate. And then on top of it, then say, but the rest of the information, I don't get it, not so smart on, definitely shows the uneducated part. And I have to think to myself, man, how is it that I have such the ability to just guess at the lumber market? Like, I just must be the best person in the world at just guessing, because it was all the understanding of economics that I have that gave me the ability to call out the lumber market as accurately as I did. People say I don't know anything about the Fed. And when the Federal Reserve was printing money at a pace that just blew everybody's mind, and they thought for a hyperinflation scenario was absolutely going to occur, I said lumber was going to go back down to its normal price. Here we are, mill curtailments to boot. To understand this information is difficult, and I understand that when I describe what it is that's happening with the underlying economic forces, when I describe the monetary policy direct Federal Reserve's own words, when I am describing economics, I am describing it from a working class point of view. When I do that, it is so different from what all those high degree educated economists look at, how it is that they understand it. And when I can accurately call out the lumber market, and they had no way of doing it as well as I did, they just dismiss it. Ah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, he's good at lumber, but nothing else. And I think right there, I've shattered their belief system. See, that's the problem they face. They can't call out the lumber market like I do. They can't do it because they're not standing boots on the ground selling the stuff. They're not taking the phone calls. They're not communicating with the people who are in the industry who are all down the trees and sawing up the boards and delivering those boards across the nation. They don't have the finger on the pulse of the industry like I've got it. And when I think how it is that I was able to call it out so accurately is because of my understanding. I knew the right questions to ask. I could see it. I could see it through the economic forces that I have learned by studying of economics. And I try to share that as much as I can on this channel so that you can take that economic forces understanding and then deploy it into your own life, through your own studies, through your own work, through your own business. As I think about how it is that people say, oh man, he really displays the uneducated part of it, I have to think to myself, anytime anybody ever says that to me, I've shattered their belief systems. They have no idea on what it is to be a working class individual who is then now going to have to sink or swim going into the future of what it is that we have available for us for an economy. This is yours. You own it. And this is how I understand it. And by delivering this information to you on a regular basis, I have come to the understanding that working class individuals are going to suffer immensely going into the future if they are depending on that day job. And I'm here to try and help you understand what it is that you can do in order to alleviate that situation for the best of your capabilities, because we're not going to fix it. There is no fixing it. There's no way around it. There's only what you can do, and there's nothing anybody else can do. And once you start to see it from what it is that you can do, you're going to really start to see it in a way that says, man, if I do not get into assets very quickly, cut back on my expenses, then I am going to have a very difficult time going into the future. See, the lumber industry is very telling of everything that goes on out there when it comes to economic activity. If you ain't building, you're sinking. That's all there is to it. You think about it. The human being has been putting structures together its entire existence. There's never been a time in which that the human being was not trying to put some kind of structure together. When that slows down, it's a slowdown in economics. Completely. When that is active, it's an increase in economics. So when I watch the lumber industry, the key component, the number one key component to any building is going to be lumber. And when you start to see that disappear from production, what do you think that's telling about the economy? When you see all the smoke and mirrors about the consumer, the resilient economy, and how it is that this resilient economy can just keep chugging along, and that it's much better than anybody had given it consideration for, and proud to be a Trump supporter, all those people who are looking at it that way, and I'm thinking to myself, did you not see the wage growth is not keeping up? Have you not noticed this? Don't get me wrong, I'm in assets and I'm that portion of my existence start to do much better than it ever has, but considering I have never had assets up until recently, I get it now. Why was I falling behind? Why was I falling down into the abyss? Is because I was not positioning myself in real estate or stocks or bonds or TikTok or TikTok. I was looking at TikTok. Anyway, stocks or bonds or cryptos or gold or silver or any of that other stuff. This is the problem that people end up seeing, is that they're hoping and wishing and dreaming that they can just perform at their day job and that be enough. And then they're going to complain about why it's not. And you don't have to look very far out there to see that the results of this economy is not one for the working class individual. If it was, there would be buildings like homes being built to support that thing. It's not that anymore. It's not that the people are in a position which they don't want a home or don't want a family or don't want to do those things that would be considered the American dream. We're not in a position inside of this economy in which that the working class can do that. You have to be an asset holder. That's all that's where the position is. And as much as like we want to blame politics or greedy people and all the other, that's fine. Go ahead and make up a good, reasonable belief system all around that, and I get it, right? And I will get it. It doesn't matter either because you're not going to change it. You have to understand that the real problem we face is ever increasing amounts of new money that's poured into the system and separated the rich from the poor. Do you see a reversal of that taking place? You see how desperate the rich people are now by like, oh, we're going to give all these people money. Like, we're going to give it all these babies and everybody else. They're going to get 250 and they're going to be awesome. And here, we're just going to just start handing it over because they know if they do not do something about injecting money into the lower end of things, they are going to just simply just go on and just distance themselves in such a way that there will be absolutely no hope of ever shrinking the inequality. And you can see it, like I look at lumber as like the key indicator of this thing because lumber is the key component to any building. Okay? I mean, you can look at the stocks and you can look at the bonds and you can look at all the other markets out there and you can call out copper and people say, no, it's cement and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, go for it. I mean, call it out as accurately as you can with your understanding of economic forces and your understanding of, your particular industry and create a YouTube video that explains it with your anecdotal evidence of boots on the ground perspective on how it is that that's the leading indicator. But when I look out there, every single time I see lumber and its deterioration of the production, of the sales, of the price, of the futures, and everything else that's happening, all I can think about is how bad of the economy it is that people are talking about. When you have the exact opposite and everybody's talking about how awesome the economy is and it's ripping and roaring and all these jobs are taking place and everybody's like singing how the praises of it, then you see the lumber industry doing quite well. It's an obvious comparison. You don't even have to literally look that far to see it. And I know that when you start shutting down production, especially in an industry like lumber, it's not just something that you can just bring back. Like people think, oh, it's just like, well, just fire it up and make more boards. Well, you can't just fire it up and make more boards. It doesn't just work like that. You got trees, you got hauling of those trees, you got the storing of those trees, you got the sawing of those trees, you got the stacking and hauling and more, distribution, hauling and stacking of those trees. And it takes a long time to fill in that production if you have a big enough gap. Now, don't get me wrong, the United States is really good at it. And if you do not have a huge gap in that production, then you could probably bring it back up and quite quickly. But the longer it goes on and the more devastation that takes place, especially when it comes to things like the logging operations, these mill operations, all the stuff, that stuff doesn't just fire right back up. I mean, you think about it, most logging operations are mom and pop operations. There's like no nationwide logger, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe there's one that's out there that's huge. I don't, maybe up in Canada or something like that. I don't know. But all of them that I know, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, which is just one of the biggest lumber producing portions of the entire world even. When you think about all the loggers around here, all of them I know are family run operations. Like all of them, every one of them. And once that shuts down, it's not like it just comes back. Yes, you can start a new operation, and it's not like you don't have people who start a new business all the time. They go and borrow the money to buy a fellow buncher or something of this nature to get their operation up off the ground and expand it and get bigger, and those things happen. But you have to be in an environment in which that would be something that would be hopeful of the future, not questionable. We are very questionable. In fact, it's like almost to the point it's not even questionable anymore. It sucks, right? And it ain't coming back. There ain't nothing in the future that says, yeah, this can come back. See, here's The hardest part that most people are going to understand is that the Federal Reserve is not in a position in which that they can even stimulate the economy. The only thing they can do is restrict the economy. And as much as people want to believe that inflation and stimulation is the same thing, that's not. Right? There's economic activity that creates the economic environment that then creates the supply and demand issues in which that you have the inflation that comes from it, from economic expansion, and then you have supply demand issues from the lack of people who are able to buy anything and the lack of availability that is coming in from the production that you have, but yet you have to buy the production of a foreign nation. When these circumstances start to play out, there is very little effort that can happen from the administration or anybody else that can reverse that. It's like once you are in a position in which that you have fallen in wages to the point that you cannot keep up, you cannot buy the house, you can't buy the car, you can't buy any of these things that you used to be able to buy. But in fact, the things that you do have to buy are things that come from a foreign producer. There really is no available position for you to take that is going to give you the ability to then get into those assets or those particular American dream positions without being an asset holder. And the longer this carries on, the worse that gets. It's just going to be that way. You know, I mean, in thinking about like how it is that you actually have a last ditch effort to get through this, right? Just knowing it to be the case. Knowing it to be the case that it's going to happen, that it's going to get this way. It's going to, if just tell yourself, right? If you look at the money printer, if that is going to expand at some point again in the future, like is the Federal Reserve going to expand the operations again? Are they doing it now? No. Were they in quantitative tightening? Yeah. Were they reducing the apps? Absolutely, they were reducing the liquidity. If you believe at some point in the future they're going to stimulate the economy through that money printer, you have to understand something like this. The money printer did not work for quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4. It took the Fed's balance sheet of $850 billion to over $4.5 trillion, and it failed to produce the inflationary scenario. What it did do is it increased asset prices, which a lot of people want to say is the inflation, but it wasn't the inflation that the Fed is looking for. And as much as we want the Fed to look at inflation differently, they don't. We have to look at it the way they look at it because we're looking at their monetary policy. And they were failing. They were failing miserably. And it had to do with something called a low neutral interest rate. Something that I've learned about this neutral interest rate is about R star. And R star is probably one of the most difficult things for anybody to wrap their heads around. I have read so much on R star and it just twists the mind to try to figure out what it is that the Federal Reserve is trying to communicate when they're talking about R star. Now, R star is the Fed's neutral position prior to inflation. If you remove the inflationary scenario, where would the Fed funds rate need to be in order to assume neutral? That's R star. If you add the inflation component to it, the Fed funds rate has to be elevated in order to be in a neutral position with the inflationary scenario. That right there makes two different neutral interest rates in which that somebody has to look at. One, the actual inflation, the real interest rate, and that the Federal Reserve is attempting to position the effective fund rate at, and the Fed funds rate if you had removed the inflationary scenario, which is R star. Now, between these two, we have a different way of looking at what neutral interest rate is, because there's essentially two different neutrals that are going to be moving at any given time, whether it's the Fed moving its position, the effective fund rate, which would then move it up and down closer to the inflationary position, or what would essentially be neutral compared to the neutral interest rate of the Fed funds rate if you had removed the inflation. And that is probably going to be the most confusing thing for most people to get. Right? So as people say, man, where's neutral? It's like there's no way in the world you can tell, because nobody knows how much inflation really exists, for one. Right? But even if you were to assume the official numbers, how is it that you're supposed to look at the R star? That is the Fed funds rate before the inflationary scenario, and that can move. See, that isn't at zero. That's slightly above zero somewhere. They think it's around a 0.5%. That's what John Williams would tell you from the New York Fed. Right? And if the New York Fed president is trying to say that the neutral interest rate really hasn't moved, it doesn't make any sense when you listen to Jerome Powell say that the neutral interest rate is now 100 basis points closer to where it was a year ago, closer to the current Fed position. How is it that these two could be talking about so drastically different things? Is because they're talking about R star, which is the neutral interest rate prior to the inflationary scenario, and then they got the Fed funds rate after the inflationary scenario, and both of these are trying to find a neutral position. Right? They're not trying to find, they either are or aren't. Does anybody else, am I just completely got everybody lost at this point? I hope not, because without this information, there's no way that you can actually understand what it is that the Federal Reserve is attempting to do. If you do not get the neutral interest rate, I mean, even me, this now realizing or finally coming to an understanding of what I think R star is, right? And I think I got a pretty good grasp of it now. It still is such a hard thing to try and understand, considering that you can't see it in real time. Nobody knows exactly where it is, and then it can go up or down based on inflation expectations. But for the most part, that neutral interest rate, the R star, doesn't necessarily move based on the inflation expectation, but the Fed's neutral interest rate after the inflation expectation or the inflationary scenario does move. Isn't that weird to think this is the same neutral interest rate, one with inflation, one without? So when the neutral interest rate doesn't move because of demographic issues and productivity growth and the heightened wedge between safe and liquid assets like US treasuries and the riskier assets like corporate bonds, when you find that these particular issues are driving the neutral interest rate close to the lower bound of zero, that does not give room for the Federal Reserve to stimulate the economy, period. End of story. There's nothing there. R star being very close to the zero lower bound means there's no downward adjustment capable of stimulating the economy without hitting the lower bound of zero. There is no stimulating effect that comes from the Federal Reserve at this point. It comes from forward guidance, signaling, jawboning, and massive, massive fiscal policy, borrowing the money and dumping it into the economy. Because you, the people, the working class, who used to be at the benefit to the Federal Reserve's interest rate adjustment, can you believe that you were actually at the benefit of that? When they lowered interest rate, corporations would borrow that money and go out there and hire people. And by hiring people and then you going to work, you increased your ability to then consume. That was the aggregate demand that they were looking for. Boom, inflationary pressure that came from it. The stimulus came from the lowering of interest rates. Well, now the lowering of interest rates cannot possibly stimulate the economy if they cannot get past the neutral interest rate before running into the lower bound of zero. There's no room. That's why it takes ever increasing amounts of money dumps into the system, because they just can't do it. It's not going to work. And those money dumps are only short-lived. They're flash in the pan. Once that money gets spent by the average everyday person, if you don't have it, who does? I mean, think about that. If you don't have the money, who got it? There's a handful of people up there going, oh man, God, we're super rich now. What happened? And it was just like, well, do you think that all the people who got the money down here, got all that stimulus checks and everything, spent it? And then if they spent it, where does it go? Right to the top. And that's where it goes every single time, because that's what happens with new money. There's no doubt about it. See, the problem we face nowadays is the fact that there was an equilibrium that was supposed to take place. When the abundance of money grew too concentrated into the hands of a few, there would be a redistribution of wealth. And that was because of the gold standard that did it. It was a common form of equilibrium. You concentrate all the money into one section, it was only a matter of time before it was redistributed back out. But if you came into a position in which it was time to redistribute, Nixon goes, oh, no, I don't think so. We're not going to do that. No, we're not going to give that gold back up. I'm sorry. Nope. We're going to go on a pure fiat currency, and don't worry, we promise we won't print too much. I guarantee you we won't. Just saying. And then now here we are, sitting in a position in which that we have this mass inequality. Why? Because you had ever-increasing amounts of new money that poured into the system after that. There was a limitation to how much they could do, even with their creative financing that they were doing with the ability to continue to print money, even though they were on a gold standard. It came to an end. There was no way that they could continue on with it. And without the redistribution of all that gold going back out there to the rest of the world, there was no way of being able to continue on with any kind of commerce or currency or anything else without the ever-increasing amounts of production of new money that comes into the system through the fiat currency game. Without that ever-increasing amounts of new money that comes into the system, then there would be a complete collapse of the entire thing. And that's why so many people are so scared about it now, is because it's gotten so big. And no doubt about it, if you are not sitting in a position that is outside of the third-party risk, then I mean, I don't know, you got bigger things to worry about. You got a whole lot more bigger things to worry about if you are not sitting in a position in which that you are insured against a third-party risk. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, what I mean by that, you really need to start studying up on fiat currencies versus real sound money, precious metals. As many people are thinking about precious metals being an investment, okay, go for it, man. Invest in precious metals. Whether you're buying it for investment purposes or you're buying it as the real use of it, and that's an insurance policy against a third-party risk. Regardless of your reasoning for doing it, just do it, man. Just get it. I'm sorry, I just realized that I have a super chat there that I am missing, and I don't want to miss any of those super chats that you guys are so awesome with. Fishy Handle, thank you so much for the $4.99. Enjoyed free cookies, hot cocoa last week at Astoria's Holiday Lights. Right on. Pretty cool. Seaside Parade, pretty cool too. Have a good one, UE. Well, right on, Fishy Handle. Thank you so much for $4.99, and I'm glad you enjoyed the area. We got John Deere with the $4.99. Stablecoins, USDC, USDT, growing alternative currencies in China, Turkey, Central Asia, South America, global consolidation into e-dollars. Inevitable. Absolutely, man, dude. You could not have nailed that any better. It is absolutely inevitable. And that's the way they're going to deal with the fact that they need to go past the lower bound of zero and go into negative rates. Is that they can't really do it without a cashless society. So they need all of them. The entire globe needs to go on digital currencies, stable coins, something of that fashion. And it's going to be very hard for a lot of people, especially those who are accustomed to using cash or don't know how else to use any other form other than cash. But I assure you, this is the direction in which it's going to go. They will make cash annoying. You will not be able to use cash. Stores will be very discouraged of accepting it because they are going to have to pay a fee to deposit it. And if you want to withdraw it, you're going to have to pay a fee. This is the way that they're going to eliminate cash and introduce digital currencies. And most people are probably not going to even notice that there was a difference between any of it. They're going to be doing Amazon transactions. They'll be doing all kinds of transactions using stable coins and not even realize that it's happening with stable coins. They will have no clue that it took place, right? Somebody might even tell them, no, this is how, and they'll show them evidence of it, and they'll be like, whatever, as long as it comes in the mail, I'm cool, right? And then that's it. Like, it's totally going to be a cashless society that then drives the negative interest rate environment. Because at that point, now they can play a whole new game that has never, ever, 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 ever existed in any kind of real manner. Right? I mean, there has been negative interest rates that have taken place in the past, but it's very unlikely that a negative interest rate environment could work with a cash-filled society, as people would not accept a negative interest rate on their any account ever, right? When they can just simply hold cash. Even if it had a purchasing power loss, They would still rather hold cash than to lose it to a negative interest rate. All right. Thank you guys so much for these super chats. You guys are very generous. YouTube doesn't like, they have no love. YouTube has no love for the uneducated economist. You don't account for velocity in your statements. Well, yeah, but the velocity is like essentially annihilated, and you can really have an inflationary scenario built just off of velocity. And we've actually discussed that before, so don't think that I haven't. I just do too many videos, and you didn't catch that one. But no, that's actually a very real argument to consider, is that there's a money velocity that can also create an inflationary scenario. Because if you have money velocity that's kicking around, then the chasing of goods and services with those dollars can there also create a effect as if there was more dollars in the system chasing these goods and services. The more things that are being purchased by these people, the demand is increasing. And again, if it's the dollar velocity that is doing it from the commerce that is created from it, or the increase of dollars that's going into it, the result of what is creating the elevated inflation is the same. It's the consuming that's happening. That's why money velocity can do it without the money printer, right? It's because it's consumption that is creating the environment. Most of the time we understand it by money coming in, because once we get the money, we consume. And that's how we understand that money velocity, or money in, that's how we understand how the inflation is taking place, because of the new money coming in. But just like you're saying, that new money coming in is almost the same effect in the economy as money velocity picking up, right? Does that kind of make sense? More people are, if people are very like cool, confident, and happy with the way things are going, then money velocity will pick up because they're willing to spend. But if all things being equal, right, if people are concerned and you start slowing down, you start saving, and money velocity falls. And then in turn, right, increasing consumption and decreasing consumption. All right. You guys are so awesome. Thank you all for being here. Look at all these comments that are just pouring in. All right, we got to. I'll stop at deplorable. All right. Hold on. These guys are talking. I'm sorry, deplorable. You're in the middle of a conversation. I'm not going to read your comment. Not that I don't want to read your comment. It's just that I'd rather read one that's kind of fresh. They're not in the middle of a conversation. All right. Milton Friedman here. I'll read this one. Milton Friedman said, "It's not so many words. These people are all crooks. In fact, I think he did have a speech about this." Well, yeah, no kidding. I mean, well, here's the thing. Like, if you worked at a job that says, "Hey, man, go off and fire up and press and print a bunch of money up and do your thing," right? And you're like, "Dude, that seems kind of wrong." And they're like, "Well, do you want to get paid or not?" Like, well, I mean, I want a job, so, and I mean, you go to work. And I don't want to excuse the Federal Reserve. I don't, right? Like, whatever. I mean, if it's a gold standard, fiat currency, crypto, I just don't care. And at this point, I just don't care. I mean, I care. I deeply care. I mean, to be honest with you, I wish it was a sound money system, because I think that would be the one that I would most appropriately work in. But it's not up to me to decide that. It's up to me to figure out what it is that's happening here. And I can blame you. You're like, "You're crooks," and I'd be like, okay, well, that's done. Now what do I do, right? Because, even in calling them out as crooks, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to jail? No. Are you going to sue them for anything? No. Is anything going to happen that's any different? No. Okay. What am I going to do now? All right, because I don't care if they're crooks, because nobody else seems to care enough to do anything about it, right? I mean, I went down that road. I went down the New World Order. Let's destroy them. I don't want to participate. Screw these guys. I don't care about making any of that, successful for them. I'm going to do everything I can to resist that stuff. And I fell into a deep, dark, depressive hole in which that I was not able to even pay for a gallon of milk. Does that sound like something you want to go down and do? Who cares if they're crooks? They are crooks. I get it. I mean, I care enough, but who cares enough that they're actually going to do anything about it? Nothing. Nobody. So as we sit here and waste time trying to figure out how to stop them from being crooks, there's ways that we can go out there to figure out how it is that we could take the best advantage for this situation for ourselves, because there is a way of doing that. All right? And in a sense, you're almost playing their game. Like, playing their game better, because they don't want people to know it. And once you see it, once you figure it out, you're like, "No, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm going to take it." See, here's the thing. If everybody figured it out to the point that they were like, okay, I get it. From day one, if I was to position myself into nothing but cash flowing assets and never once ever buy into a luxurious experience and took everything that I ever had and made sure that it stayed right here in the United States with every investment that I got, I I can imagine that if every single person decided to do something of that nature, we would still have homeless. We would still have the people who didn't have anything in their life. We wouldn't have, all the horribleness that you see right now that would be taking place. The only difference is we would have a whole lot of people who could say, hey, you know what? You don't need the government. We could set up missions. We could set up the help. We could set up the efforts. We could set up the hospitals. We could set up all the other things from it. And we don't have to have government involved in any of that stuff because we are understanding of how the money flows. And if we step into a luxurious experience so that we can heighten our standard of living, that's going to deteriorate society. It's going to make the problem of you guys' existence even worse. So instead, we're not going to do that. How much, like, does that sound reasonable to the human population out there anywhere that they would do something like that? Because I'm trying to think of what is the opposite of the Cantillon effect. Like once you deeply understand the Cantillon effect and you think, okay, what would it take to reverse that? That's what it would take. It would take you living in your car, working for $150,000 a year, making sure that all the money that you invested stayed here in the United States, never once ever moving into investments outside of the United States. And then any money that you did spend was on trying to alleviate the pressures of the homeless, the drug abuse, all the other things that were deteriorating inside of society. Not new trucks, not fancy hotels, not crazy resorts type of things. No, no, no. Right? Because all that stuff creates the Cantillon effect. You'll have separation between the rich and the poor. Eventually, you'll drive out the domestic manufacturers. You'll drive in ever increasing amounts of foreign production. And the problem of homeless and drug abuse and alcoholism will get far worse than you can ever possibly imagine. So you can see that happening now because that's the way it works. Right? I mean, I would love for it to be a different way. It's not. I mean, it's just not a different way. That's just the way it is. I got real irritated with the girl that I really like. It's kind of crazy, and I didn't talk about like my. Anyway, this girl I know, she was speaking, and normally when she speaks, I find her to be very attractive and cute and fun and just bubbly and all the wonderful things that you would ever find with somebody that you think is not awesome, right? And she started giving her opinion about the homeless and the drug abuse and all the other stuff. And I was watching this like very positive and what I felt was a very like uplifting type of personality deteriorate into some very ugliness that I thought, what are you going to do to change any of that? Right? You're definitely able to pinpoint out and show how horrible it is, but are you willing to get down to the root of the problem and deal with it? Are you willing to understand that somebody who has been living on the streets their entire life with drugs and alcohol in their system at 30 years old, there is literally nothing that they can do. Like at that point, they are ruined. You want to keep yelling at them and calling them ugly and pitiful and hopeless and worthless? I mean, what are you going to do for them? Nothing. There's nothing you can do, right? There's nothing you can do. But understanding the situation is probably going to be a little bit better than saying, oh man, look at these worthless druggy people. Why don't they go get a job? And I was like, they can't get a job. They're not capable of getting a job anymore. There's nobody who's going to hire them. They're not mentally there anymore. They have ruined it. They have ruined their life. All right? And they are here. They exist. You can't make them just disappear. You can't just say, go away. All right? They can't just disappear. Sorry, guys. Let's move on. Let's get back to the lumber. 244 people watching with 72 likes. I hope you like the video. I don't know. I'm getting too into it. Okay, savers are supposed to be the lenders, and the capitalistic economy can't keep printing new money. Well, I understand that. That's the way it's supposed to be, but that's the way it's not going to be, right? That's not the way it's just like, I mean, I would love for it to be that way. That we can work hard, build up a savings, take our savings, put it into the bank, have a decent rate of return that then has a purchasing power that is then held into the future. I mean, I would love for it to be that way. Let's make it that way. It's not going to be that way, okay? Right? Just understand that it's not that way. You know, it's not fair. Nobody is more allergic to work than the people deciding to print. Um, I don't know. I don't think they ever really worked in their life anyway. I mean, they think they work. Like, I can understand like they have a lot of brain functioning things that are happening with their, all the stuff that they're doing. But, I mean, to them, that's work. And in reality, it's complete imagination, right? It's leveraging the future. It's like a manipulation and leveraging of the future. Yeah. And so that's not really work. It's like, I don't know what the hell it is. It's like, I guess, your grand manipulation scheme, right? I mean, but to me, that's not really work. Now, in turn, here it is. I'm talking all about it, and I feel like I'm working, right? I feel like I'm trying to do the part that I need to do in order to share the information so that everybody else can then look at this from a working class point of view to better position themselves, understanding how the new money comes into the system and separates the rich from the poor and all this other stuff. So what they're doing isn't really work, but what I'm doing is based on them not doing anything. You see how weird this is? See how much economic activity they're not making? Science has a definition for work. All right. So the more money a bank has at the Fed, the more assets they can purchase. This increased monetary velocity in the asset markets. In a world full of sharks, be a dolphin. They're cute and friendly, not as scary as the shark, but will drag your ass to the bottom of the ocean just playing with someone. um, Service sector versus manual labor. Simon, I know you and I both avoided the COVID shot scam. So why couldn't we both avoid the central bank digital currency thing? Well, you can. Well, see the thing, Walrus. Is that Walrus? Is that right? Well, Walrus, you can. You can do that now. You can be on your own gold standard. You don't have to avoid it. I mean, you don't have to participate in it. You can avoid it all you want. Here's the thing, though. When you go down to the store and you say, here, I want you to take my copper penny for the 3.5 cents it's worth. All right. Nothing's going to happen there. Now, if somebody says, here, you accept central bank digital currency, you can say no. Right? See, now here's the difference inside of it. Just as they said no to the copper, right? You can say no to the central bank digital currency. See, they said, you got to wear a mask. You got to do all these shots. You got to do all this other stuff. And you said, no, I don't. And they said, well, you can't be in my store. And that's every right, because you're not on the street. You're in private property. And there's a difference between the two of them. And once we understand these components to it, now we start to relate it down to a different thing. They're not forcing money on us. We choose to use fiat currency, believe it or not. There is not one law requiring you to accept a dollar. There's no law that requires a bank or a store or anybody else to accept the Federal Reserve note. There is no law requiring that. We all voluntarily do it. We all sign paperwork promising to pay in that. We assume we have no other choice. That is completely inaccurate. We have every choice in the world, very much like not getting the shot and not wearing the mask. Unfortunately, we also won't be able to go into the building. Do you see the difference in this? If we don't play with the money, we won't get the job. We won't get to be able to earn that money so that we can pay the taxes that they are promising or that we have promised by signing the W-2. See, if you want to go and get a job, you're going to have to earn fiat. But you don't have to go and earn fiat. You can go and work for anybody you want, earn anything you want. If you can convince somebody to pay you in BTC or gold, there's nobody stopping you from doing that. You can do that. Right? Just like you don't have to wear a mask and you don't have to get a shot. But if you're going to do it in this building, if you're going to do it in these locations, if you're going to participate in these ways, it's not up to you to decide that. That's your stuff on the street. In here, there's a different game to play. And that's where the difference inside of it is. You can be on your own gold standard. You can be on your Bitcoin standard. You can be on any standard you want, but you can't force somebody else to do it, especially another private individual who wants to be on the fiat currency, who wants to be at the government's mercy. Yeah. Or the mercy of the government. You know what I meant. You can't make it different. That's the thing. You're not going to be able to come up with a new way to make it any different. They come up with a new way to make it different, and they already did that. That's what the whole point of the stable coins are, is to take it into negative interest rates and cashless society. All right, the devil cannot do damage unless he asks permission from God. Yeah, see, that's the way to look at it. Bitcoin Ben, man, thank you for being here. We go along with the fiat currency just like we go gladly along with the central bank digital currency when the time comes. We will. Like, most people won't care. Like, they're going to be like, oh, by the way, your benefits, whatever, food benefits or, old Social Security benefits or whatever, they're going to come on these cards. A little different than what you had expected. No worries. Pretty much the same. And people are going to go like, whatever. Click. Right? And then they'll be just doing stable coins and that's that. And they won't even know. They won't even notice the difference. I suggest you buy yourself as much property as you can, and there is only so much land on this marble. Yeah, and I agree with that, deplorable. The only thing that I would have pushback against the land is to be in consideration that if that's the only thing you have, it might be difficult because you can't take it with you if you need to bail out, right? You got to leave your land. And then on top of it, if you are trusting enough of your government to at least help you out with the property rights, because protecting it yourself from a whole mob of people is going to be very hard. So, like, it's cool so long as you have a decent government and you have at least a decent amount of money or your own income, because, like, if you ever need to bail out or if you ever need the money, like, the property is there and you got to go and whatever. So there's a couple of, like, stipulations inside of it, but I totally agree. Owning property is absolutely. Cantillon talks about it, right? There's only two people who live independently of the state: property owners and the capitalists who invested into the system. That's it. So if you're not a property owner and you're not participating as a capitalist, then you're probably going to end up falling behind. Because, I mean, you got to think, Cantillon was talking 250 years ago before he even knew about what politics in America were even about. Right? Like, it didn't have anything to do with politics. It has to do with the way that money flows. And it's going to flow this way. And what you end up with in politics is the symptoms of it. And when we look at the politics, we think, man, they're the ones to blame. They're not. I mean, they act a fool and they do some really messed up things. Don't get me wrong, right? There is some definite impact on the people's lives that they are doing, wars and murders and craziness and all that other stuff. But that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the fact that there is ever increasing amounts of new money that pours in. And people say, aha, right there, that's the government doing it. But it's really not. It's you begging the government to do something about it because you continue to use the fiat currency, right? Like, if we didn't use the fiat currency, they wouldn't be able to do that. If we said, nah, I ain't going to work today if that's what you're paying me in, I'm doing it in gold. I'm doing it in Bitcoin. I'm doing it for a really, really well prepared ribeye. But I am not doing it for fiat currency. If we were to live that life, then there is no way that those powers that be would be conducting themselves in any way, shape, or form like they do. So it's our fault for accepting fiat currency. Right? We don't have to do it, but we're too scared not to. All right. What is it? El Tornado? Thank you so much for the $4.99. Simon, did you see the New York is partnering with Coinbase to give certain group of people 12K worth of crypto over a period of time. No strings attached. Yeah, and see, well, here's the thing. You're going to find that there is going to be more and more and more of that taking place. And it's not so much that, like, again, it's more of evidence of the separation and them in a desperate attempt to try and figure out a way to prevent the people from just falling behind, right? Like, it's weird. Like, it's almost now to the point. In fact, I don't think it was ever now to the point. I think it's always been this way that it's not a matter of like the people falling away as because those people work hard every day. Like they don't change the way that they have been doing their thing, right? I mean, you show up 9 to 5, like I've been there every day. I do my thing, I do my sales, I go home, but yet it seems to get harder and harder and harder, right? So they're falling away, and this is what it seems like they're falling away, but that's not what's really happening. Like they're essentially stagnant, and it's them that are leaving. Like if it was instead of going up, like imagine them going out, like they're on a road and we all started off in the same group, but then there was a certain amount of groups that could actually move faster and further away. And that's essentially what's happening is they're speeding up, right? And they're getting further out there faster. We're not changing. We're still going at the same pace. They're going away, right? So ultimately, trying to slow them down so that they don't leave us behind is what most people are attempting to do. There is no way that the powers that be are going to slow themselves down. Like, that's the problem, right? We're like, yo, slow down. And they're like, catch up, yo. Right? And it was like, hey, we're not going to slow down. We'll try and slow down. We won't slow down, you know? And they're like, oh, how do we catch up to this? You know, even if we were to pick up the pace, we can't catch up because now you guys are just so much further ahead. Is that, I mean, I think that's probably the best analogy, right? Like I think that is probably the best way to look at it. This is like there's no way that these people are going to slow down. There might be a couple of them who are like, hey guys, do you think we might have slowed down? And it was like, well, no way, I'm going to get back up. No, 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 don't leave me behind. And then they'll go and run catch back up with all the rest of them because everybody's trying to head down the road together, you know? So some people are way faster and more got more going on to do it. All right. A whole class of people aren't pinched by these conditions. A digital currency, yeah, and they position themselves to do that. Like I literally think to myself, I'm like, okay, so what do I do to get Freddie into a position in which that he is not like really messed up? Okay, I need to build a money machine. Not like a money machine that's fake currency. I need to build a money machine that actually spits out like a dividend and a yield and returns and all this other stuff. And now, if I did build this money machine, I would have to do it in such a way that would constantly build itself over time. So really, if you built a money machine that was building out yield, you would have to have like half of it going back in, like half of the capital returning back into it to keep it growing in order to keep up pace. And then you would probably have to have a job on top of it because really at this point, it is so difficult to try and even keep up with a good job and everything else going on that if that doesn't exist along with a decent job, man, it's going to be a hard one. I'm going to give them the house too, I think. You know, that might hopefully give them some kind of decency when I'm gone. Maybe. Right? Maybe. There we go. Keith Werner will take your silver and gold and pay you interest in metal, not fiat. All right. The grifter that might be the most read thing I read all day. Super intelligent, artificial, general intelligence will become digital God. All this meaningless humanity exists to create digital God. This is our destiny to merge with the machine. See, this is where I think, like, a lot of times, people who are so stuck in society, like, I imagine, you know, maybe it's just so, people are just so far removed from what it is to be a natural human. To know that there is an existence that's outside of things, that there is an existence that comes from just being in nature, being a human, being on the planet. And that all the communications and all the electronics and all the equipment and all the stuff that we have is literally man-made for comfort and pleasure and confinement. But that the reality exists far beyond that. All right. When all that stuff is removed, there's still an existence that's here that would be here regardless of that stuff. All right. Living in that existence or knowing that existence and what that is and what that means is very profound to most people who have like no clue about what it is. Right. When you discover it, when you see it, it becomes such an, I don't even know how to put it. It becomes such a, it becomes almost like a relief, right? It becomes a relief from the existence of what mankind is, because you know that there is actually something that exists that's not this man-made thing that we are dealing with, right? And that is a relief. It really is. Most people think that we have no other choice, that there is no other possibility, but just to know that there is that in itself, like if you just removed all the stuff, there is an existence here that doesn't involve anything, right? And so to know that that is a real thing, there is hope and change, that there could be an existence of something different from what we have, and you can create that all on your own. To know that that existence, that without all the stuff, it's right here and now, and everything in between. That part is, I know, is hard for a lot of people to internalize. I gotta put my battery in here, guys. Hold on one second. You guys having fun hanging out with me tonight? Oops. Whoa. Stay up here with me. If you guys are having fun, hit that like button. Yeah. Hit that like button. We'll get more people to join in on tonight's live stream. We got 211 people watching. That's quite a few. Appreciate you guys joining in. We're an hour into this live stream. It started off talking about lumber. That's the only thing I really wanted to talk about, more about monetary policy and stuff. But I just kind of ramble on, and I don't know. I just drift to wherever we go, right? Who we got up in here? We got Larry Bird, all nighter hider. What up, bro? We're talking to machines every day. We're slowly losing our humanity. Well, here, let me give you a little bit of an example of it. So many of you know that I do work, I do retail sales for a lumber yard. So a lot of things that we are now doing our sales through is portals, right? So basically there's a program. I go to the computer, I sign in, and I go to what they refer to as a portal, right? So it's a website, a program, and I just punch in all the details of a door that I want, or the window. Like I go to a different one for Windows, I go to one for hardware, and I got one for metal, right? And now I got an email today from the metal company, in talking like pole barn metal or standing seam metal. A lot of people call it zip metal or something like that, right? So it's that kind of company, right? And I get this email from them saying, hey, so it's like, a broad email they send out to everybody, and it said something about like sales were slow, and something about like steel demand is low or something of that nature. Using the e-commerce portal, they'll give us an extra 1.5% off. Now, they already gave us a discount, but then they increased that discount by using the portal, saying, hey, we got this offer that's going to go for like a month or whatever by using this, like encouraging people to use the portal to get an extra, get an extra discount on top of it all. And I'm thinking, man, this is it right here. This is the schemes, the little tiny deals that they do. Like most of the guys that I work with, they still call the orders in, right? But now, like, because it's so convenient and I get a discount to it, so, why wouldn't I do it if you're going to make money at it, is to use the portal. And so now here it is. It's getting closer and closer to where my job is really like exiting itself out. There's going to come a time in which that the customer can just sit at home and plug all the information that they want in, and then it'll just show up at their door. They don't need to come down to the store. They don't need to talk to me. right? Like ultimately, if they know what they want, why would they talk to me? All I'm doing is just listening to them and then plugging it into the computer. Like I don't like outside of maybe offering them some guidance on their project, which is very helpful. Don't get me wrong. Like that's the point of the salesman being there is to give them the appropriate stuff and to guide them through the purchase and everything to make sure it's all accurate. But if they know what they're going for and they know what they want, then I am pretty much useless there. Right? Because what am I other than somebody who clicks the little button on the mouse and makes sure that I'm entered in all the appropriate information? But ultimately, AI could do that. Like it don't need, in fact, AI could look at the prints and do it far better than I could. What am I to do? Right? I see it happening and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to resist. We could resist it if we try. And that's cool. Like, I mean, I don't have a problem with somebody says, I'm not using the portal. And I'm like, don't. Don't use it. Good. Hey, I don't care if you use it or don't use it. I'm using it because you know what? It's going to happen anyway, and there is no really anything stopping it, right? And you can make it go as slow and cumbersome and be difficult and all that other stuff. I'm going to make an extra 1.5% while you're doing that, right? What am I going to do, right? It's going to happen. I see it happening. There's nothing that can stop it. Where's my glasses? All right. There's the tip of the iceberg. All right. At what price does Bitcoin have to be considered a failed experiment? I don't know, $100 million, or what? A zero? I don't know. I mean, it's been zero. It's been like it had no value at one point when Mt. Gox crashed, right? You guys remember Mt. Gox? I watched it happen. I was watching. I remember all that. I was like, oh man, that Bitcoin thing is finally gone. That's weird. Like I remember way back then. I remember looking at it going, wow, man, all those people got screwed. That's weird. You know, what a crazy thing. And here it is. And they're like, oh man, did you hear Bitcoin crashed? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, it was all over the news. And oh, the exchange? And they're like, yeah. And it was like, you realize like the Bitcoin protocol doesn't really matter what the price is. The Bitcoin protocol keeps functioning though. Like that's what I'm failing to understand by a lot of like the whole Bitcoin will fail is that never once in the history of Bitcoin since it started has it failed. Like the blocks keep getting generated, the transactions go through. There is no failure to the Bitcoin protocol. It works. What people's expectations of the price, that can fail. Don't get me wrong, that part fails all the time, but that's human, right? That's not the Bitcoin. That's the human aspect of it screwing it up. I think BTC fails when it's not used anymore for transactions or store of value. Yeah, and I think I think Bitcoin fails when literally people stop mining it. When people stop, when the nodes turn off, when the miners turn off, when nobody's performing the transactions anymore, then it's over. But until then, the transactions will still continue to go through. And that's where like I just like unless those guys stop the mining operations, the nodes stop and all that other like then it continues. It just ticks away, right? And if it doesn't have any value to it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't still operate. As long as those people are working the program, that's it. And I guess it could get to the point where you just couldn't operate the computers enough to perform the actual mining capabilities to get the last transactions out there. But I don't like I see more people attempting to try and mine, not like bigger mining facilities and stuff like that. The concentration of miners, because you need such a concentration of power and all that other stuff going into it, is mind-boggling to me. It's like it's overwhelming. I don't even understand it at this point. I'm like, God, I don't know. Like people are like, we ever tried thinking about mining Bitcoin? I'm like, not anymore. Not after I seen what these people are attempting to do to try and get the Bitcoin. All right. So what's gonna happen when all the BTC is mined? Well, okay. Um, I'm going to give you a very Keynesian answer to this since we're talking economics. And then in 100 years, when the last Bitcoin is finally mined, well, everybody on the planet will be dead and gone. It's not our problem. How about that? And I know that's a horrible thing to say and just leave that to the future. But ultimately, every single person who is on this planet right now is not going to be here when that last one is mined. So I don't know. Like, what's going to happen? Does it even matter? It's not up to, like, I mean, when they came up with the fiat currency, they asked them, it was just like, this can't last, can they? They said, no, how long does it last? It was just like, well, we're going to set it up for lasting 100 years. What after 100 years? It was just like, we'll all be dead and gone. It doesn't matter. That's literally what they said back in the day when they were setting up this, whole idea of going into the fiat currencies and diving deep with central banking and and all the other stuff. Like, that's literally what they said. They're asking. It was just like, well, this can't last forever. And they're like, well, we'll set it up for the last 100 years. We'll try and make it last 100 years. What happens after that? Everybody will be dead and gone. It don't matter. That's sick, isn't it? But whatever. No, we didn't. I mean, we inherited this from people who said that it wasn't going to last more than 100 years. I'm like, okay, well, whatever we do, I guess we're going to have to make it last at least 100 years or something, because we're all going to be dead and gone after that. All right. First of all, digital currency should never be a point of speculation. Absolutely. BTC is absolutely a speculation. There's no other way of actually looking at it. So is gold. Gold's a speculation too. Okay. And those are money, and fiat is currency. Now, Bitcoin and money can be currency. Bitcoin and gold can be currency, and it can be money, but fiat can never really be money. It can only be currency. And once you kind of understand the difference between those, it really starts to make a lot more sense, right? But Doge taught me everything. It's insane. People agreed to fiat. How can they be so foolish and trusting? Doesn't make sense. Well, it's because they really don't have any other way of understanding the money system, because they were never taught anything else. Right? And that's really why it is that it's very difficult for a lot of people who really understand like gold and silver and what it is that means for an individual who is working hard and saving. Like, they get it. They get it really well. But who doesn't really get it is the majority of the people out there who don't understand how sound money works or what that really means. And so when you have like a whole group of people who are now in a position in their life in which that they are dependent on the idea of the system, getting their benefits from the system, relying on a government job, working in market or an investment kind of industry in which that you have to have ever increasing amounts of expansion in order to have a job within that industry. These are the sort of things that people now don't want to give up, right? Like, I mean, there was a time in my life when all I was sitting on was silver. I was like, let the whole thing crash. Like, let it go, man. Let it ride, baby. I don't care. Because I didn't. Like, I really didn't care. I didn't have anything to lose. So if everybody else lost anything, I'd be like, woohoo, got me a box of silver, you suckers. Right? And that's really the way I felt. And I mean, seriously, that's the way I felt about it. And now I look back on it, I'm like, that was a horrible way of looking at this. Hey, where are you guys going? I'm back here. Where you guys? Oh, good Lord. This is the professional uneducated economist YouTube channel where we produce high quality videos for the average everyday person. Stay there. All right. Guys having fun? Simon's getting rowdy. All right. People holding on to their jobs like Simon holds on to his silver. Well, here's the thing. Like, I never really anticipated, like, no, that's not true. There was a time in my life I really anticipated that silver was going to go up, but I don't really think about it in that fashion anymore. And if it did, like, if it runs up to an extreme number, like you're talking hundreds of dollars an ounce or something, but yeah, I'm probably going to unload a few of those, just saying. I'd probably find a position in something that would be like a return, get into properties, do something. I don't know. I mean, that's a lot. That's a good return off of it. But I don't really have like much in the way of like wanting that to take place at this time. I would much rather it be $20 an ounce than $50 an ounce. Right? Because I want to load up on more. I want to get as much as I can because right now I don't want to sell silver. I want to sell silver at a time in which that I can deploy it into something that is going to be really good of a return. Right? I want to be able to take it and then say, hey, here I'm going to have this investment that is now coming back to me. And most likely, the best time that that's going to happen is going to be at one of the most devastating moments within the economy. And that's where it's going to scare somebody the most. It was to unload what is that they have held on to as an insurance policy their entire life and turn it into an investment. And that at that moment for most people is probably going to be a very difficult time out there. And I hope that I understand what it is that's taken place enough to pick that moment, right? To be able to carry that box over to the other side, wherever that is, whatever that means. Do, do, do. All right, let me cruise up here. I think we'll just triple digit silver by Q3 next year. That'd be fun. That's how I view crypto. We based our system on who we would control, not who is competent or talented. Eventually, this makes dysfunctional systems. Well, here's the thing. Like, I mean, Cantillon describes it. Describes what happens to the politicians, right? They they insult other countries and build statues to themselves and do all this other like things, but they don't really like create any kind of condition that causes the problem to be worse. That's happening because of the move into luxuries from the abundance of money, right? They just kind of make it look really bad. I'm saving all my 82 pennies in older. I call it my smelting pile. Yeah, yeah, I got mine. I never took mine into the house. I got my copper pennies right there. Can you hear the difference? No. Interesting on labor conversion. Huh. $100 silver clothes. I heard if you buy rolls of 50-cent pieces in dollars from bank tellers, you get silver ones. Not all of them, but if you. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of that happening. Like, going and getting rolls of quarters or rolls of half dollars and finding silver ones inside of them still. It's probably not as common as it used to be, but there's a channel out there, half dollar make you holla. I think that's the name of the channel. Anyway, those guys, I don't know if they're still doing it, but there was a time when they would open up like rolls of half dollars to look for the silver ones, and that was like their big deal was to go through the 50-cent pieces because you could still find quite a few silvers in there. But yeah, half dollar make you holla. Uh, we are cup and handle and the cup and handle and the cup and handle. That's the craziest pattern setup. Have you seen the movie Idiocracy? It perfectly describes what we're living today. Actually, I haven't. That's some Faber school advice. Move hard on silver at 39. Waited a damn long time. Alrighty. Most people just want a regular gig to feed their families. I totally agree. Most people would just want a very normal, easy, simple life. One day, precious metals could be worth enough to buy tools and start a business and employ that person. Not sure where you're going at, Freedom, but that's not really in the cards at this point because anything that people are going to buy is going to be from a foreign producer. And I don't want it to be that way. It's just the way it is. And if you're going to live in this world today, then you are going to end up buying production of a foreign nation. You are exporting money when that happens. If we were on any kind of gold or silver standard, then we would export all our gold and silver to a foreign nation. Now, that's why I say if we were to not buy into a luxurious experience, keep our money, make sure we invested it and kept it here in-house, and then use that money to help out people who are less fortunate than us without increasing our standard of living, then we might have a choice or an ability to then have something that is like an American dream here in the United States. But we would essentially try to keep it as little and as diminished as possible, while at the same time investing as much as possible from all our extra that we come across. That mindset is the only thing that would prevent the Cantillon effect, because it's literally the opposite. But that's against human nature. Humans do not behave that way. They won't. Like literally, the moment that they get money, they're gonna go and spend it. It's just like they don't think about they don't think about how it is that they can make this money make them money. They think about how it is that they can use this money to make them feel better. Whether it's drugs or parties or experiences or something. All right, I've watched 4 episodes. Tell us what's up with the dice now, or I unsubscribe. Bitcoin CEO. I am not going to tell you, bro. You give me some kind of threat like that, you think I take threats easily? Come on, man. You know better than that. No, they came from a viewer who sent them to me one day in the mail. I got to get a P.O. box again, but no, I let my P.O. box lapse. Anyhow, it don't matter. I had this mail, and I opened up the mail, and there was these blue fuzzy dice in there. I'm like, oh, hey, that's cool, but what? And I threw them up there. And I went on and I did my video. Well, then later on, they started doing the viewers were like, hey, where's the dice? We were doing our stock picks. We were doing numerology off of it. And so every time the dice were missing, they had to say something about it. And so anyway, I just started putting the dice up there. And then next thing I know, they just kind of became part of the channel. And they were like part of the logo and everything else. And I'm like, the damn blue fuzzy dice. I couldn't believe it. So really, it was a viewer who did it. Who sent them to me. All right. Am I worthy of your subscription? If you want to know about the economics of society, just watch Rat Dystopia. Yeah, that was a pretty good one. It really did kind of describe a lot about, society. Pennies are valuable metal more than nothing copper. Yeah, well, I mean, you think about it right now. One of these copper pennies has 3.5 cents worth of copper in it. I mean, that's pretty incredible to think. Here it is, a 50-cent roll has $1.50 worth of copper. Pretty soon, these things are going to be worth like a nickel, right? I mean, they're closer to a nickel than they are a penny. And so, if one day they're a nickel, it could be a dime. Can you imagine 10 pennies being worth $1? Doesn't sound so unreasonable, does it? See, I've been saving copper pennies for a long time, and now I pull every one of them out of the till. We only got a few more months left. They're going to be gone. They're going to be gone forever, right? They're going to be gone, and you will never find these things again out in circulation because they just won't be used. They're just going to be gone, and the only people who are going to have them are the people who hoarded onto them like I have. And people say, what are you going to do with those things? And I'm going to say, nothing. But in 20 years, I'm going to bust those things out. People are going to be like, I can't believe you were smart enough to save all those pennies. And I'd be like, I know, right? Just like the silver quarter now is worth like, what, $11? Just shy of $11 or something for a silver quarter. Can you imagine telling somebody back in 1964, it was just like, hey, you know that quarter right there is someday going to be worth $11. And they were, I mean, I guess they saw something very close in the 80s. So I guess that wouldn't be that surprising to them. But, ultimately, like $11 for a quarter. This is the thing that I think about. How many times in your life have you ever heard of somebody saying, back in my day or whatever, back in grandpa's day, you could buy a gallon of gas for a quarter? And I'm thinking you still can. In fact, you could buy a couple of gallons of gas for a quarter. You just have to have the right quarter, right? Some quarters never changed or lost value. Some of them actually gained value. For the most part, a silver quarter has always been able to buy a gallon of gas. Sometimes more. But very rarely does it not. And that's the idea behind the whole silver metal, precious metal concept, is that people recognize that. But what they don't recognize is that not all of us can share in the same commerce with it, because there is only a limited amount of silver. Once it becomes concentrated, the depressions start to kick in, because literally there is no money to do trade work for. You want to work, you got products, you got stuff, you got everything in the world, but the concentration of money has gone to the hands of a few, and there's literally not any money to be floating around for us to do commerce with. That was the problem that we found back in the turn of the century, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, is that business cycle was so devastating to people. They begged for something to happen, and J.P. Morgan, the man, was tired of bailing out the nation. And he says, we got to do something different here, guys. I'm tired of doing this. So him and his banker buddies come up with the damn central banking system. It says there. Now, when the business cycle heats up and that concentration of gold starts to deprive the rest of the economy the ability to do commerce, because there's just simply not enough currency out there because it's being concentrated. There's only so much of it, and if it's concentrating, that means it's not out there chasing the goods and services. We'll inject paper money into the system, making an elastic money supply to keep that business cycle going. So as the economy heats up, we'll inject money into the system. When it slows down, we'll pull the money back out. This elastic money supply. And we promise we won't print too much. That's the big promise. We won't print too much. Of course they're going to print too much. It concentrates up to the wealth of the people in power. And they're like, well, I know, maybe if we just print a little bit more and give it to you guys. Whoop! Oh, we got it again, didn't we? Oh, well, I got an idea. Maybe if we print up more and give it to you guys. Whoop! Here we go. We got some more of it, didn't we? Wow, we really got a whole lot now, don't we? Well, maybe if we print up some more, you see what I'm getting at? Like the people down at the end of the line, they don't hold on to it. They spend it. If they held on to it by cutting back on their expenses and then deploying that money into some sort of secure rate of return, then it wouldn't go up to the rich. But instead, they buy stuff. They buy luxurious experiences, and then they lose the money to the rich. Because if they don't have it, who does? You are completely right. I have been right about everything. I'm just kidding, guys. I'm not just kidding. I've been right about everything. I mean, I'm not right about 100% of everything. I try to come up with good ideas that we can discuss and, come up with some kind of weird ideas as far as a topic to break down or something of that nature. But when it comes to monetary policy, when it comes to things like the lumber industry, when it comes to the inequality and how the Cantillon effect has taken place, I'm accurate. I am so accurate on it. And the difference between me and most of the economists out there is most economists out there have a lot of money. They have always had a lot of money. They grew up with money. They got educated with money. They are very money knowledgeable in all kinds of aspects of it. But the one thing, oh, geez, it's raining. Oh, golly. Hold on one second, guys. Suburbans are awesome about leaking water right into the truck. You can't leave the window down at all. All right. But these guys are awesome about making money. right? They know all about how that works. But what they don't necessarily understand is what is it that an average everyday person is supposed to do on the street level with no education, no sense of business, no idea of entrepreneurship, only has been working day jobs their entire life. They have no idea on what it is that those people should do, and there is no way that they can create an environment that is going to benefit them. That's the problem that most of those economists now face, is that they just don't see it in the light that is now going to be a benefit to the average everyday person. They only see it in a light that preserves their wealth. Because why else would you look at it any other way? Like, why in the world, if you had all that money and all that abundance and all that, and all that stuff, would you possibly take it out of your existence so that you could then understand it from a working class point of view? You just simply would not. So there's no way. I don't care who it is out there, there's no way that they can view the economy in a position from ground up, standing on the ground with absolutely no skills, no mindset to how it is that they can figure this thing out. They did. That's how come they're there. They understand how to invest. They understand how to do all these things. They try to explain it out there. The unfortunate part for them is that they don't know how to explain it from being somebody who has failed and stands on the ground, who is trying to figure out how it is that they look out there and then not know what it is that they need to do. They look out there and they say, man, I got a day job. How do I make this work? What is it that needs to happen out there that the politicians can do that'll give me the ability to make this day job work? That's what they're looking for. That's the answer that they're looking for. How do I make that happen? And as I explain to people, this is going to be a very difficult road to go down. You cannot necessarily guarantee that that day job is going to do anything for you outside of maintain your existence. And that is the most that you could probably ask for from it. If you want anything else in your life, you're going to have to take some serious effort towards. One of them, cutting back on your expenses. That is probably the number one thing to do. People say, I've already cut back on my expenses. And I'm thinking, I don't think you really have. I think you've taken about as much pain as you're willing to tolerate, but I don't think you've cut back on as much as you can. And then when it comes to making more money, most people don't want to put in any more effort than they do for their day job or their maintenance anyway. So as long as they're maintaining their existence, that's as far as it's going to get. They won't cut back on this, even though they said they will, or they have, they won't. And then as much as they make, that is it. That's the plan. Nothing more, nothing less. And being in that position is going to be very, very hard if you do not cut this and increase that. And then know why you're doing it. Because you got to do it so that you can get into the extra money, the money beyond the money you're already making, and then deploy that money into a secure rate of return. Something beyond that of your occupation. Once you do that, and you're in the mindset of that, you're going to find that the world becomes a much easier place to be, right? It's going to be a much easier place to be. And it's not going to work for everybody. If everybody was to do it, it wouldn't work. Know that there's going to be a group of people out there who are going to do really, really well at it, and there's going to be a whole bunch of people who have no idea on what they were doing, and they fail miserably, and they stand on the street, and they cry every day. Whose fault is it? Right? Like, I mean, I love to blame people. I mean, it was fun. I used to do that a lot, you know. In fact, I got real creative at blaming people, but I never found any kind of solutions in that. Right? I never once ever found any solutions in blaming somebody. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed doing it. In fact, I even think about how it is that I do it sometimes now, and I'm thinking, man, why did I do that? And I was like, 'cause it's fun. That's why. Because it was fun. So after you make your first million, you're allowed to spend 5K on a vacation. No, you're not allowed to spend money on any kind of vacation like that because that's the luxurious experience that is going to drive the separation between the rich and the poor. There is no amount of money that you can earn that then gives you the permission to go into luxurious experiences. Now, if you're asking me if it's okay for you to do that, absolutely. Go party it up, man. Go make the money and party. Don't think that you don't shouldn't do that. I mean, I'm not telling you not to party it up. Go do it. Right? I'm just saying that's what's going to create the inequality and the problems that we face going into the future. And I have very little doubt in my mind that if you don't do it, somebody else will. You know? Right? So if you got the million and you want to go party, who am I to tell you not to do it? I'm just saying that if that's the direction you go with it, you're going to separate the rich from the poor and you're going to cause even more problems to the society and life. And that's what's going to happen because that's the direction we're going. And there's nothing that you can do to stop it. So if you want to participate in that, go for it, man. I mean, just don't get mad about the problems that we face when you do that. There's going to be consequences. Know that. Know that there will be. All right. Hit the like button. Yes, please do. One large advantage of the rich have over us is the limited hour day trading. I hate the pattern day trading rule. Huh. Only creators and first few investors. Speculations living only to rip you off using large amounts of advantages. Little fish doesn't. Huh. All right. So after you, we already read that. Every time I want to get a new truck, I think about UE and his leaky ass Suburban, and I don't. Yeah, I kind of think about the same thing, man. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, guys. I think about it all the time, especially, like when Dad let me his Toyota. When he took off for a while and we had the Explorer in the shop, he was like, "Hey man, go grab the truck and drive that around one of the Explorers in the shop." It was nice, man. It's just like, man, these Toyota. You know what was really cool about the Toyota? I'll tell you, man. I don't know how many people I told it. I don't know if I already said this, but the Toyota has like all the bells and whistles to it, right? It's a new Tacoma. And it has that driver's assist. And I was driving down the road, and if you drift towards the white line, it'll like take control of the vehicle and put you right back in the center line. And I thought, oh my, that is cool as hell, right? Like literally, like if you start to like drift a little bit or whatever, it'll be like, whoa, hey buddy, you gotta be back here in the center. And I'm thinking, oh, this is awesome for texting. You just kind of guide yourself to that white line occasionally, and it'll just keep putting you right back in the center. You can just totally just pay attention to your phone. It's awesome, right? Right? I'm not into new vehicles. I like being able to put money away. I like being able to put something towards a secure rate of return beyond that of my occupation to hopefully have something in my life beyond what it is that well, I don't even know what it is that I want. I just know that there was a time in my life I never thought I was going to have anything. And now I actually feel like I can have something. So having anything is awesome, you know? And being able to just build it up, and I'm on a path of building it. Like, I don't know if it's going to be enough or not, but at this point, I don't even really care if it's enough. Just the fact that I'm able to even attempt to do it is awesome. Right. And I mean, I don't know how many people actually take that to heart when they but just to be in a position in which that I can attempt to do it is awesome. Because I never even had the ability to even attempt to do it before. And that's where I think, like, for me, it's so much different of an experience than a lot of other people out there is that I never thought that I'd even ever have made it this far. So making it this far is just like, oh man, let's just keep going, man. I don't know where it's going. Let's go. And it was just like, have you made it yet? It was just like, dude, I made it so long ago. I started paying my bills on time years ago. I made it a long time ago. People were like, dude, you're driving a 97 Suburban. It was just like, oh, yeah, that part. Yeah, yeah, we got to let that part go. Yeah, well, I made it a long time ago when I started paying my bills on time. That's when I made it. I don't know about the rest of you guys and what it is that you need to have made it, but that was me making it, was being able to pay my bills on time because I never had that before. It was a time that was the only thing that I had wished for. I didn't care about anything else. I didn't care about anything else. I just wanted to be able to pay the damn light bill and the insurance and all the stuff. I just wanted to be able to pay those simple bills on time. That wasn't a lot to ask, was it? Bills on time is nice. It is. You know, when you didn't have that before, it's one of the greatest things in the world. Mm-hmm. Your father is violating your lofty principles. Yeah, you know, I kind of laugh at that. But then again, my dad is not necessarily in the same agreement when it comes to economics or anything else like that when it comes to this. My dad worked really, really hard. He did 20 plus years in the Coast Guard, and he did another 20 plus years in the Park Service, and he retired with a government pension essentially, or a government retirement, a state retirement, his social security. He positioned himself quite well within the idea of a socialistic mindset. Now, I wouldn't call him a socialist by any means, but he was definitely a liberal Democrat, if you can believe that. Right? And I don't have any problem saying that about my old man. He is a great dude who spent an entire life in the military and dedicating himself to the, you know, to the service of others when he was performing everything what he did within his careers. And I have to give it to the old man. He was very confident in everything that he did, and he ended up with a really good life on the end of it. And to go out and buy a brand new truck, hell yeah. Hell yeah, man. I don't blame him a little bit. Yeah, not after what he's done. And then he lets me drive it too, so that's cool. Your fathers lived a better life than we did. Well, yeah, and he was also very dedicated to that, right? He showed up every day. He showed up every day. Like, you know what got me in is like, I don't mean to talk too much about my old man, but he liked to drink too, right? And this is something that I learned from my old man. I don't care how much he might have drank the night before, if he was partying up with his buddies or whatever. It didn't matter how much it was. He showed up on time the next day to work. Every single time. There was never a time when he like sometimes I don't know how the hell he did it, but he never, ever, ever, ever missed a day of work. He showed up every single time. Man, that was the dedication that he had to it all. And for that, he is getting rewarded for it. Most people would never have done that like he did, you know? And I'm not trying to sit around defend him or, point out anything or anything like that. I'm just saying that's his path and the way he went about it. Okay, let me explain one more time. BTC course suddenly skyrocketed. Few months before Ukraine, someone was moving out real assets, selling them for money, and then buying BTC. I've never missed a day because I get free day a vacation. I never miss a day either because what else am I going to be doing, man? I mean, if I don't show up for work, then I ain't making money. What am I going to be doing? I got to be to go and making money somewhere else, or else it's costing me not to be at work. That's the way I say it. It was just like, what else am I going to be doing with the day? Why not just show up for work? I mean, people were like, well, what if you don't feel well? It was like, if I don't feel well, the last place I want to be is off of work. Like, I want to feel good when I'm off work. If I feel like shit, I'm sorry. If I don't feel good, I want to be at work. Like, that's where I want to be. That's where I don't want to feel good is at work. I want to feel good when I'm not at work. I think about all the money my mother and grandmother spent at the casinos. Yeah, right. And I figure it was probably reparations for the Indians. Huh? I guess that's one way of looking at it. The last day I missed was 5 years ago when it was crazy work becomes second nature. Yeah, I remember. Well, it was, in fact, it was COVID, and my like everybody told me you can't go to work. And it was just because I did. I was like, I was sick. I had a cold, and I'm like, it's just a simple cold. I always go to work, right? It's not COVID. I don't have COVID. And they're like, you can't do it. You got to stay home. So I called in sick, right? And this was before I actually got COVID because I did end up with COVID at one point, but it was before that actually happened. And one of the guys that I have worked with for like, we worked together at a different lumber yard, and when that yard shut down, we both went to the current one that we're working at. So we've been like working together for like, I don't know, better than 10 years, 12 years or something like that. And when I called in sick, he told one of the other employees there, he's just like, holy crap, Simon must have died. And she was just like, what do you mean? He goes, I've never once in the history of working with Simon has he ever called in sick. He said that he has never, ever seen me call in sick, not one single time. And when I went back to work, that girl asked me about that. She was just like, Dan said that you never called in sick. And I'm like, that was the first time that I think I have called in sick in like 10 years, 12 years. Yeah. And she was just absolutely amazed by that. And so when I was talking to my boss about it, and I said, like, because I told him, I was just like, yeah, I don't really call in sick. He goes, nope, you've never called in sick. He admitted that straight up. He was like, you're the only one who's never really ever called in sick, ever. He says, there's another guy who doesn't, who hasn't either, but it was just like the two of us. And, I told him, and I was just like, why do you think that is? I mean, do you think it's just from showing up like with a cold or feeling ill or whatever? I just never got the flu, whatever it was I was going to like. What is it do you think is going on that I didn't call in sick where all the rest of your employees call in sick several times a year? You know? And he just kind of looked at me and he didn't want to admit it. And I was just like, you think people just kind of convince themselves they're sick? That's what I straight up asked him. I was just like, do you think people just literally convince us, like they wake up in the morning, they feel kind of, right? And they're like, oh man, I just don't feel it. I'm just gonna, and then they just literally think themselves into feeling like hell. And so they just call in saying, hey man, I just don't feel good today. I can't make it in. And I'm thinking, if I was to do that, I never would have showed up because I was hungover every single day. And I'm thinking that was the work ethic that I got from my old man, is that it doesn't matter what you did the night before. If you're going to party it up, you better show up the next day. And if you don't feel good, that's your fault, your problem. That's not anybody else's problem. And if you don't show up, you're making it their problem. Don't make it their problem. So I thought if I could show up to work and I was there on time, then I get to drink as much as I want. And I gave myself permission by doing that. And that was the reason why I was dedicated to my job. It was literally because of being an alcoholic. Says that if I could show up to work, then I can drink. Like I told myself that. So I showed up to work every single day so that I could drink. Isn't that weird? Uneducated OnlyFans. Yeah, people have asked me to start. I'm like, what do you want to see on OnlyFans? Like, what is it you want out of me on OnlyFans? Yeah. All right. Seems logical to me. It worked. All right. My dad used to say, you play, you pay. Nah, man, that's not what happened. It's the Charlie Kirk's assassination, and Israelis were pushing money back over the Democrats in Congress. It was payment. Oh, good Lord. Okay. I worked hung over from 19 to 26 years old. Then I hung up the jersey. I drank maybe 3 times a year. Yeah, that's good. If you gave it up at 26, that's awesome. I didn't give it up until I was 40. Uh, a lot of people showing up to work half dead from partying. Oh, man, all the time. Fake economist, fake taxi style in the back of the Suburban. All right. What is that? What is that to do to your liver? You must have liver of steel. Um, I don't know. Like I thought about it. My wife and I drank pretty heavy, and when she went into rehab, I mean, she did 30 days in-house rehab, and they did all the tests on her to see how much damage she had done to her. And surprisingly enough, whether like I don't know how the hell, because we drank a lot, but somehow they said like she didn't do any kind of significant or any kind of even noticeable damage to her liver, from what I understand, or any other parts. Time will tell, right? I mean, what was funny, because I think about these things. Like you say, oh man, I made a full recovery, and then 25 years later, or 30 years later, that whole thing starts to come back and haunt you. You hear about all the sports injuries from when people were playing college ball or whatever, and it was just like, oh man, I injured my back when I was a kid, and it really started to hurt when I turned 60 or 50 or something like that. So these are the things that come back to get you. And so even though you may not notice the damage now, it's not to say that there isn't damage that will come to fruition later on in the future. But as far as that goes, no, we're actually really healthy. And surprisingly, Sarah and I look a lot younger. Like when I look at people our age, people we graduated with, like our, other people in the community that we know who are our age, like Sarah and I, we look a lot younger than like a lot of our friends and stuff like that. Now, I have to admit, like when I let my beard grow out, when I let the facial hair grow out, there's a lot more white, a lot more gray hairs that come in. And every single time that I shave and then let it grow in again, it's a little whiter. And so it's definitely the age is starting to show and the wrinkles are starting to come. But for the most part, here at almost 50 years old, I look at a lot of my friends, especially some who party really hard, did a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking and stuff like that. They look old. They look haggard, and I think to myself, man, is it because Sarah and I had this, like, we essentially have been together since we were kids? I think somehow, like, we locked ourselves in when we were young, mentally, in that, like, we know we're adults, we do adult things, we're doing all that other stuff, but in our minds together, we're still like kids. We're still like these young teenagers trying to figure things out. And it's weird to think, because we've been together like our whole lives. Here we are, like 30 years later, 30 plus. We're going on 31, almost 32 years we've been together, and yeah, and it's just like we still like we joke around about it. It was just like like I tell her, it was just like I feel like I never quite grew up. Like there was something missing. Like I missed the bus to go to adulthood or something. Even though you're there, right? You're doing all the adult things, but somehow deep down inside, I feel young. I feel like I never grew up. You know, and it's weird. It's like it's almost something I don't even want to admit. But if that's what keeps me looking better, like I mean not better, but just keeps me looking, like I'm holding on to my health and my youth and my, that feeling of it is the reason why, then cool. I mean, all right, then I'll go with it. Yeah, I know how you feel. Being a kid really keeps you young. Yeah. Having children makes you young as well as having a 1-year-old at 46. Yeah, and I think that had a lot to do with it too. Having kids really changes the way that you act and feel and behave about everything out there. And so I kind of agree with that. I always thought that having kids would make me feel old, but it doesn't. It actually makes you feel kind of young, like you're saying, Kirk. And that's weird to think, because you would think the opposite. You would think like if you don't have kids, having kids would make you feel old, but it doesn't. It does quite the opposite. I have to think about that. Why? Yeah. Why does it do that? You guys are awesome. We're 148. Oh, 148. We're an hour and 48 minutes into this with 227 people watching, 160 likes. Thank you so much for continuing to hit that like button. That's what keeps the algorithm going. That's what gets more people to join in on this channel. So if you're really enjoying the tonight's live stream and the topics that we're covering tonight, continue to hit that continue to hit that like button, the thumbs up, and we'll get more people to join in on this. Having a 20-something-year-old girlfriend also keeps you young. Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, I would agree with that. Yes. Just go to the doctor. They will find all kinds of things. No, that's yeah, right. Um, digital currency, chili shotter bit of wow, what a name. Digital currency has a potential, but not in value storage. It is speculation. Okay, pure casino game. Yeah. Thanks, Simon. I once missed a day of school in the third grade. Teacher put me in special education for 2 weeks. Yeah, see what you get for that? Brad Jonas? That the same Jonas that I grew up with? You different one. All right. And broke. Keep your body moving. That's the key to health. Well, it certainly is helpful, and I mean, just being aware of the intoxicants that you put in you. A lot of smoking, I think, is probably the big one. People who smoke a lot of cigarettes in their life did a lot of, smoking of tobacco and just tobacco products and drinking. Those two party elements of intoxicants is probably one of the biggest issues that ends up having like deterioration in your health going into the future. It's just like those two are so easily done, consumed, and damaging. It's just unreal. Yeah. Like, I think to myself, I drink too much coffee. I do. I drink way too much coffee. I should not drink as much coffee as I do. I drink way too much coffee. And at some point, like somebody is going to tell me as a doctor says, you're going to have to cut back on your caffeine intake. And I'm going to be like, God, I wish I would have done that a long time ago so I don't have to face this right now. Right. Because it's just a matter of time before I hear it. Now, other than that, I cannot really think of anything in my life that I really am doing right now that I need to cut out. If anything, I need to add exercise, like do a lot more cardio kind of thing. Maybe cut out some sugar. Like I eat, like I like, like if there's sweet stuff in the house or whatever, I like to eat on that sweet stuff, especially at night. So other than sugar and caffeine and maybe a few other things that I got going on out there, I don't really think about anything that I am doing as being very health deteriorating. Like for the most part, I think I do fairly healthy. I eat very healthy food. When I like the food that I take to work, I eat like carrots and apples and stuff like that. Like that's what I eat. When I snack at work, that's what I bring. So what do you do? Like, you got to take care of yourself. And if you expect to not face consequences from, taking in intoxicants or horrible poisonous stuff, like, some of the food that most people eat, then you can expect that you're going to face some issues from it. And I mean, I don't want to try and say like, hey, I'm just ultra perfect in every way. Absolutely not, but like I used to have a horrible issue with drinking and it was bad. It was deteriorating my health, it deteriorated my financing, deteriorated my family. It was deteriorating everything that I had going on. I eliminated that out of my life and I found that the few issues that I was having as far as like, smoking weed and doing the other things, I'm not trying to excuse any of that other stuff, but it was far less of an issue than the alcohol was. Like the alcohol was definitely an issue. When I eliminated that, it made it a whole lot easier to start focusing in on the appropriate things in my life that I needed to do. Yeah. And that was it for me, like Once I saw that was the case, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm getting it. It's these particular things, these chasing of pleasures that are really screwing it up. And the more you can limit that, the better off you're going to be. Like, even you start finding pleasure in chasing excellence anyway. See, before you were chasing this false sense of pleasure, getting high or going out and partying and just hanging out with people and somehow getting a charge off of that. And this is like literally the feelings that you would chase by chasing those pleasures. But then if you start chasing excellence, you're going to find like what ends up coming from that is a feeling of pleasure from chasing the excellence, right? And so chasing pleasure doesn't seem to be important as much as it is chasing the excellence, because literally the reward that you feel from it is a pleasurable experience. And so from this actually elevates your life. And that's hard in the initial beginning, because chasing excellence in the beginning is boring. There's no real reward that comes from it. Um, it can be like even like frustrating at some point, thinking like, why the hell am I just sitting here every day doing this as opposed to going off and partying like I really feel like I'm going to do. That part is hard to get through. But once you do, you get past all that stuff, then you start actually enjoying a lot of what it is that you might have found that was boring or dull or not exciting or something like that. You actually start to get that feeling of being like in a state of like fun and enjoyment, and like that digging in and grinding and feeling good about that by the end of the day, having accomplished, whatever it is that you were working on for it. Even though it may not have had like this monetary reward for it, your sense of accomplishment and getting that thing done is going to be benefiting you in the future. That sort of thing right there, man. Once you start getting in that sort of line of thing, you don't even think about pleasurable experiences anymore, because that's where you're getting the pleasure from, right? You're getting these dopamine hits instead of from like TikTok videos. You're getting it from, doing your business, working your sales, doing whatever it is that's going on. That is that element of excellence that is out there. All right, 205 people. Thank you guys. 100 and what, an hour and 56 minutes into this thing. Smoke and drank heavy for about a decade. I could feel it slowly killing me, so I stopped it. And that's really what I think for me too. Like I could just literally feel the deterioration. Vegetarian means bad hunter. All right. Wealth is the number of days you can pay for the standard of living forward you can financially afford without having to work for more income. Idea makes you awake. Awaked money makes you tired. Go get you childhood rems. I used to take fish to work, but I was fired because I stank the place at lunch. Yeah, I mean, occasionally somebody will bring in some fish into work, and we like I mean, especially here in our area, we got a lot of seafood in our area. So, it's not uncommon for somebody to bring in fish, but for the most part, it doesn't really get stinky. It's usually pretty fresh, or if anything, it's smoked fish. Like a lot of people around here like to smoke the salmon, and that's like a very common thing. And although it can be strong in a lot of times, which it generally shouldn't be, but it can be, depending on how they prepared it or whatever. Never really do I ever get like, this overwhelming like fishy stink smell that comes from any of it. I like fish. I eat a lot of that stuff. So maybe it's just not something I would ever notice. uh, Sleep is very important to health also. Yeah, and that's one thing I don't do very well. I don't sleep very well. Homesteading and the ability to be self-sufficient doesn't require money. Yeah. Keep your mind. No, you're right. It doesn't require money, but it does require some skills, and it does require a particular mindset. And that skill and mindset is quite unique in order to get that done. When people say you could just do this, it's just like saying, hey, you could be a millionaire too. I think those two are very much on the same planes. Like if you are capable and have the skill set and all that, go out into the middle of the wilderness and build you a cabin and homestead and live off the land and all that other stuff, that's probably the same amount of time, effort, and energy, and essentially the type of energy mind that it would take to be a millionaire working in the stock market or something of that nature. It's just like, how do you want to do it? And we say, you live all independent by yourself out there and you don't need any money. And it was like, yeah, you can live completely independent by yourself too with a whole bunch of money. So, eh, like, don't get me wrong, I would love to live in a cabin for like a month out in the middle of nowhere, but I don't want to live my entire life like that. We were just selling numbers, tokens. Fish and vegetables can't go wrong. Really, you can't. I mean, if I lived on a fish and vegetable stir fry every single day for the rest of my life, that would be fine. Like, I would totally be down for that. If that's the only, like, if you're like, hey man, you got one meal to be prepared for the rest of your life, what is it going to be? And somebody says, dude, it's going to be fish and vegetables from now on. I'd be like, okay, that's probably the one I pick. Like, I would like ribeyes and all that other stuff, but I'm thinking, like, what is it that I could really actually live off of for the rest of my life? And that would be it, right? A fish and vegetables stir fry, for sure. Yeah. Uh, For a healthy life, follow the following steps: health, food, water, exercise, enough sleep, and reduce stress. Yeah. And I honestly think that I do pretty well on those, except for maybe the exercise and the sleep. Right. But for the most part, I do pretty well. Like, I think I drink a fairly decent amount of water and, I eat healthy and, all that other stuff. And I don't really stress that much. I do think about a lot of stuff, but I don't. There was a time when I used to stress. There was a time when I would come home from work and I would sit on the end of my bed and I would just stare at the ground because I would not know what to do next. Like, I would just be like, man, I cannot believe how overwhelmed I feel by everything that is going on. And I would just have to sit there and just like chill out for a half an hour before I could deal with anybody or anything off of it, because that's like the life that and I would do that every day. I would wake up in the middle of the night and do that. Like, sitting on the end of the bed staring at the floor was like, that was my spot for a long time. For a long time. That's what I did. All right. But I don't feel that way anymore. Like, getting out and about and, actually it was like getting in a position in which I felt like I could actually just pay those bills. That did it for me. Right? That changed everything. Some people in my life, um, both relieved and added stress, and so getting the right people in my life, that did a number for it. But, you create all the stress for yourself. Nothing has any other meaning than the meaning you have given it. So everything's a neutral until you have decided what it's going to mean to you. And it's easy to get stressed over things and get mad about things or just feel frustrated or whatever. And then it's easy enough to just let it roll off or to take it in stride or to think about it in a different fashion than the way that you had normally done it. I think about it the other day. Like, I notice it more and more now that I'm becoming a lot more aware of what it was that was frustrating me and why it was that I was getting frustrated or angry at stuff. And it doesn't happen as much. And I think it's because I recognize why it's happening or when it's happening, instead of like by the time it's too late and I've already blown up or whatever. It's just like I get that maybe what it is that's triggering me doesn't have anything to do with me. Right. And that's where I happened to me the other day where it was funny because I don't even want to get into it. It was at work, but I'm standing there and I'm being told to, like, basically, I can't talk about it. But anyway, because I just don't want to get into it. But anyway, it just came into a situation in which that it was just seemed so ridiculous. Like, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, you're literally telling me this right now. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm realizing this situation doesn't have anything to really do with me or anything that I got going on. So I'm just gonna take this. I didn't tell the person. I just in my mind, I just took it and just walked away and just let it go for like a couple of days. Right. And like literally a couple of days. And then I came back to it and everything was like started flowing and it was cool again. And I don't want to get into too much detail on it, but it was at that moment when it first started to happen, I was starting to, like, I could feel it. I was just like, no, like I was like getting angry at the point because I could see how ridiculous the situation was, and I was going to demand the situation be changed. And I'm thinking, dude, that's your ego. It doesn't have to change. It can wait. There's a problem here that doesn't exist, or that is existing, that doesn't have anything to do with you. Don't get involved. And that's when I mean, I'm literally thinking this, and I'm like, pick up the ball and just go home, all right, kind of thing. Grabbed the stuff, and I sat back down at my desk, and I set it out to the side. And a couple of days later, when I went back to it, everything started flowing just fine. So again, like, it was being able to recognize these things when it's happened. I could have escalated it. I could have gone. It was up to me at that moment to do whatever it was that I wanted to do, and I chose, in my mind, to just let it go. And I was thinking, man, I have never really been able to do it like that before. Right? I've learned to let things go, but usually it came with a disagreement or an argument or some kind of snarky comment or something that came from it. This was the first time that I actually recognized it in real time and just didn't say nothing, just skipped out. And when I came back to it, everything was cool. Right? No worries, no hard feelings, no nothing from anybody. It's like, I know. I'm starting to figure this shit out. All right. Just follow UE's three rules. Uh-oh, what are my three rules? Don't spend money. Oh, that's one. Yeah. No junk food. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Don't spend money, no junk food. That's one rule. Okay. Number two rule is reduce expenses. No medical bills from eating junk food. Okay. Good job. All right. So far, so good. Three, invest savings into assets. Yeah, cash flowing assets specifically, if you can figure that part out. That's the hardest part. Is people are like, well, what do I put it into? And I'm like, I don't know, go get a rental property or something, right? And they're like, I don't want a rental. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know, man. Dividend paying stocks, or which ones? I don't know. Go figure it out, man. There's so many ways out there to make money. It's like you got to really figure that out for yourself. Some people don't need to be in rentals. Some people don't need to be in stocks. Some people need to go get educated. Like, some people literally need to take their money and get an education because that's the best return on their investment that they could do. Like, I mean, I'm not saying everybody needs to do that. Some people do. Some people need to be in rentals. Some people need to be in stocks. Like, everybody needs to pick what it is that they need to move into. But again, like, not everybody needs to do the same thing. All of us have to get creative on what it is that our skills and our mindsets are willing to let us do. I think about it. People say, dude, you would be so good at being a landlord and rental properties and owning all that other stuff, dude. Why don't you do that? You're in the perfect position for it. You would be awesome at it. And I'm thinking, dude, do you have any idea on how, like, horrible that feels to me to think that, man, now I have to work on these houses every day and do all this maintenance and keep up on them and do all this other stuff. Don't get me wrong. I like working on houses just fine, but I don't want to have it as my constant dealings with, like, tenants who don't keep up on things, who don't because you have to understand, I work at a job in which that I deal with a lot of property owners, a lot of landlords, and it is a lot of complaining. They do talk. Some of them say, "Oh man, I got this awesome tenant, 20 years, fixed the place up, made it look 100 times better than when they moved in." That is such a rare story. It never takes place. All of them talk about how horrible of an experience it is and like how they just trash the place. In fact, I had a guy who was so good at being a landlord in with his particular units, he just assumed that he was going to essentially tear out and replace the bathroom and the kitchen after every long-term tenant that he had there. Like if they were there for more than a few years, he just assumed that he was just going to replace everything in the kitchen and the bathroom, And he was pretty good at it, and so to him it wasn't no big deal to rip out the vanity and put in new ones and do all the other stuff like that. To him that was like a lot of fun, actually. That's why I think he did it. But really, that was his mindset. It was just like, I don't expect them not to trash the place. They all trash the place. I'd just rather just them trash the place, and I'll keep the deposit, and I'll just make it brand new again and up the rent. And okay, whatever, man. The sad part about it was the man thought that he was saving his family money by doing that. I don't know where you guys are at on this one. Okay. I don't know where the real estate and rental market is supposed to be going, but I heard another YouTuber say real estate investment trusts were at year low prices as rents falling and property values are leveling. Yeah, and see now I totally agree too. Like it's something that is in deterioration, but I have to think about what it is that I would expect from the future. I do not expect that the average everyday person is going to be in a position in which that they can buy. Most likely, they will rent. Rental properties is probably going to become the norm. In fact, rent everything in your life is probably going to end up being the norm. Like Uber and DoorDash and all these other things, these weird conveniences that are out there, that's going to end up becoming a lot more of the part of the economy. And the idea that the average everyday person is going to own a car will probably dissipate. Owning anything like that is probably going to be very infrequent, and it's going to be renting of all the stuff out there, from houses to cars to even bicycles or whatever. People just simply just won't own anything anymore. And I know that kind of goes in line with the whole, own nothing and be happy, but it's you can kind of just see it going in that direction anyway. It's just kind of headed towards that. So it's whether it's done on purpose or just the natural consequence of ever increasing amounts of new money that's pouring in and doing it. Owning home won't be very easy. Owning a car won't be easy. Yeah. All that stuff is going to be it's going to be essentially for the rich. That they're the ones who are going to be doing all that other stuff. Everybody else is going to have to rent. Because you think if you're just working class individual who didn't get into assets, who didn't figure out a way to be in a cash flow business or something like that, then you're going to have to rely on your day job, and that's just going to until there's nothing that there's really going to be any kind of benefit from having it other than just maintaining your life, uh, living in a cubicle and eating a cup of soup and shit. Eating cup of noodles, like the ramen. Maybe Jumberjack landlord contracts a management company to oversee those properties. No, I know a lot of people do. And in fact, Mike Zuber, that's what he talked about. I believe he puts all his out to property managers and all that other stuff. Never liked Lumberjack's delivery. You didn't? Oh, that's too bad. Matthew's a hell of a good dude. Have you heard of Gorgism UE? Georgiism? No, I don't think so. Maybe. No, I don't think so. I learned a lot on one rental at a time channel, Mike Zuber. Yeah, absolutely. I found their information to be incredibly useful and helpful, especially for those who are really wanting to get into real estate, who are either just getting in or wanting to get in. Because they talk a lot. I mean, everything they're talking about is how for the average person, all the options that they can that they can go through. And then also, these guys are talking about their experiences that they are facing right now as well, which is incredibly helpful, not from somebody like to have somebody who's in the game with it. Right. And somebody who is trying to elevate people up in the game. So they have like basically like, work cases. It was like, no, this guy's doing it, kind of thing. And so they can like show the evidence. It was like these guys are getting into the game right now. These people have been in the game for a while and they're expanding. Here's some people who are doing like awesome at it, and then there's the big guys themselves. And all through this out this line, they are trying to share how it is that in each one of these positions, what it is that you need to do in order to get to the next step, right? In order to get in there. Those guys push me hard. They really wanted me to get into real estate. And I think the major problem that I ended up facing here in Astoria is that it's just so bad, so expensive. Like like I would love to try it out in any other area but mine. And I have a day job which keeps me very close to my location here. And although this is a straight up excuse and there is nothing else that it is other than an excuse, buying a property that's not near me makes me very nervous, especially for that first one. Like, if there's anything that goes wrong with that house, how do you deal with it? You got to get out there and deal with it. And if it's a ways away, it's going to cost money. It's either hire somebody or fly out or do something. So, like, having a property, at least for the very first one, to be a rental property, being distant from me makes me very nervous. Like, I don't want to do that for my first one. Over time, once I kind of understand the game, then I'd probably feel a little bit more comfortable with that. So, being in the 10th most expensive place in the entire nation with populations 10 to 50,000, I'm not real excited about buying rental properties in Astoria. The cheap house here is like $500,000. Like, I how do I do that? Man? It's just like if I don't know, that's scary as hell. And then rent out to who? Who the hell is going to pay the rent on a $500,000 mortgage? I mean, I gotta hire like I gotta be a big house and have like I don't know who the hell would live in it. A bunch of get me a bunch of nurses up in there. That's what I'm gonna do. I don't know. What do you do? Yeah. All right. Pods will be the new RV parks. We need to outlaw property tax. Greetings from Detroit. Well, greetings to you. A lot of affordable housing in Detroit. Can someone simply explain why the end of the economy starts with the end of lumbers? Because the everything within the economy is essentially going to be recognized through the lumber industry. So if everything in the economy is doing well, then you're probably going to see the lumber industry kicking ass. You're going to see logger operations, you're going to see mill operations, you're going to see all the transportation with distribution hubs, and all the activity within the retail space is really doing well. But when you see that industry dying, all things else being equal, you're probably seeing everything within the economy not doing well. And the reason is because the human being has always, from the time that they were ever around on this planet, have been trying to put a structure together. That's their instincts. It's what they do. So if you have the human being not putting structures together, and that's obvious when you look at the lumber industry, this is a depression of the human being experience within the economy itself. That is a slowdown that is going to be recognized. Once the lumber industry has changed, you're going to see that expansion change. Until it happens, you don't have any hope. It's a sinking economy and it's a sinking industry. I think the first 10 minutes of the video were much better than that explanation. I'm getting tired here, guys. I'm starting to slur my words. You can always tell when I'm getting tired because I can hardly speak anymore. It's like the words start coming out very like muddled, and I start to slur my S's a lot. All right. I will rent my big house to a bunch of Korean nurses. See, I got a 4-bedroom house. That's a lot. That's a lot of rental. All right. The best time to buy a home is when you can afford it twice. The best time to buy a home was 20 years ago. All right. And in 20 years, you're going to say the exact same thing. It's the same time, the best time to plant is the best time to buy a home is the exact same time to plant a tree. 20 years ago. All right. 20 years ago. How much longer do you guys want to go? Should we keep kicking it? We got 2 hours and 18 minutes into this thing with 206 of you still watching. Thank you so much. 184 thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for hitting that thumbs up. Get it up over 200. Let's see if we can get 16 more thumbs up there. Get it over 200 before we end the stream. We'll give it like another 10 minutes here because I'm sure you guys probably want to go to bed too, right? Until 6 a.m., Simon. Yeah, let's do a 24-hour live stream someday. You guys want to stick it out with me for 24 hours one day? Keep going, Simon. Build your second home. Rent out the old home to traveling nurses. That's actually keep kicking it, Simon. That's actually something that I thought about is renting the house out after the boys have grown up and out of school, out of high school, maybe out of college or whatever. And what would I do with the property then? And I'm thinking that would be the perfect opportunity to rent it out. I mean, I got a huge medical district, booming here. So, having nurses would probably be a very realistic thing. Not that it would be nursing, it could be anybody, but all I'm saying is it's like renting it out to anybody out there, 4-bedroom house, that's probably could turn a pretty decent penny, especially, fairly, I'm going to call it, turning into a fairly affluent area, as you can just see the rise in the standard of living that is now just growing exponentially here in this area. So, I mean, I think that it might actually work out pretty well. And then for Sarah and I would love to travel around. I'd love to, by that point, if the boys are up and out of the house or pretty much, self-sufficient, then to be able to just do whatever, like right here, I feel I don't necessarily feel like pinned down. Like I don't want to use that, but I feel like I need to stay close, tight here until like this raising of the family is complete. Until like at least Freddie's up into, at least into high school for the most part. And at that point, then I would feel much better about like, okay, let's go and loosen up and do some other things. But until then, it's just like, I got to keep it. I don't have to, but I feel like that's the appropriate method of getting this part of the experience done is to stay as close and tight as I can here. But then after that, it's just like, oh, let's, let's do some stuff, let's get out there and do some things. But until then. And then at that point, then yeah, the house would be probably much further down the line as far as like, rental, if, rents don't go down but go up for the most part. Then I would find like down the road here, rental income would be more than enough to pay the house and probably even give me some cash flow, All right. I want to watch other YouTubes, but I struggle to look away when Simon is live streaming. Well, thank you. I take that as a pretty good compliment. I appreciate that. I would hijack the whole market. Are they consolidating paving a road? If we get 0 point energy, then all that will be in question is space and minerals. Think of how disruptive that wouldn't be and needed to be big data, quantum computing. I would like to get a home and add a shed from Home Depot as my primary residence and then rent out the house. Jesus Cal, I'm not sure how we're saying your name, but I totally agree, man. Like if you could house hack of such nature, like to me, I'm thinking, man, there's a lot of places out here that have a decent house and a shop. And if I could find that, I would buy that property, park an RV in the shop, live in the shop, and rent out the house. If I could figure that out. Like that's the way I would go about things. And then let who's ever renting the house pay for the property. That's the type of thing that I would do for sure. If you could house hack of such nature, get somebody else to move in like, buy a house and rent out the rooms or something of that nature. Absolutely. I mean, in fact, I talked to a guy one time who bought a house, and if I remember right, he rented the house out and lived in the garage. Like he rented the rooms out, the bedrooms out, but he lived in the garage itself. Isn't that like owner of the home and lives in the garage and letting other people live in the bedrooms, enjoying the house for its fullest, while they're making the payment, he's living there essentially for free. He didn't pay, he wasn't paying anything. And these guys are making the payments. I mean, you got to sacrifice some stuff. And that's like, to him, it was just like doing that for a few years was like, the ultimate. Larry Bird, thank you so much for the $4.99, man. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate all the support here. All right, just nice comments, not Simon here. I like Simon streaming because he has a variety of topics. Last week it was ice cream and cannabis, and tonight it's food and house rentals. We were talking ice cream last week. God, we do cover some topics, don't we? Man, there's so much going on. It's no wonder so many people are hoarding assets. All right, you gotta smash some like, bro. All right. You're speaking my language, Simon. I haul logs for a living. Lumber market sucks. Yeah, it does. Elevated life. You know, and that's the thing. Like, that's why I'm able to call out the market. That's another thing. People ask me, how is it that you're able to call out the market so easy? Like, what stocks are you, like, what charts are you looking at or whatever? I'm not. I talk to people who drive trucks. I'm talking to the middle up. I'm talking to people, right? And you only have to talk to a bunch of different sectors and get their honest opinion about it. It was just like, hey man, what's going on at work? Just tell me the truth about things. Like, is it slow comparatively to whatever? And you start getting their honest opinions, not one that's sugar coated or try to make it seem like it's different from what it is or worse or better or anything else, just giving you the straight truth. And you get a bunch of different people from a bunch of different angles on this. You can get a really good, clear view. I mean, it's it's not hard for me to trust the information that I get when I am so close to the source. You know, when I'm talking to a buddy of mine who's worked for a logging company that's been in this area my entire life, and he's talking about how slow it was and how he was sweeping the shop and he had never done that before, and how there's these quotas that are going to the mill. And I've asked him, I mean, how often has that happened in the past? And he was like, no, I don't remember ever happening before, and these are the things that he's talking about. Yeah, it gives me a lot of confidence in being able to call out the things that I do. I'm not waiting to read a chart that somebody else had lived to create the chart. I'm talking to people who's given the information that here in a few months is going to show up on that chart. And that's the reason why I'm able to do it. Right? It's my location. It's where I'm at in the Pacific Northwest. It's my job that I work in the retail space. It's the people that I know who are here. It's all that. If I didn't have this combination of things in my life, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Right? I mean, there was people who had as much information as I did about the distribution network, but they didn't necessarily see the retail side of it like I did. There was people out there who understood the whole mill processing and everything that was going on within that, and the curtailments and the slowdowns. But again, they didn't necessarily see the distribution networks like I was looking at. You know? And that was it. I didn't need charts. I didn't need charts to call out any of that stuff. It was nice to use the charts because I could point to them and show evidence of it and stuff like that. But for the most part, I didn't need any of that stuff. All right. Delinquency started spiking, so we know recession's here. And well, this is the thing. Recession really was more important during a time in which that the working class individual was a very critical component of the economy. See, like the average working class individual was such a component of the economy that if they slowed down their work, they would slow the economy down, right? So if they lost their job and they got laid off and unemployment started to rise, the economy would fall into a recession. But now the working class individual really isn't the part. It's not the. It's not. They're not the. They're not the critical component anymore. That critical component has moved up to the asset holders, who are doing the majority of the consumption. So if a recession was to take place, it would have to be a slowdown in their consumption that is coming from the top 20% of household incomes, and they're doing quite well. Like they're excelling, right? They're increasing. It's the bottom 80% of people, those who are working class individuals, we are feeling like the recessionary pressures from it. But unfortunately, because we are no longer the critical component in the economy like we used to be, it, it's like it doesn't matter. We will feel the pain, and it really isn't going to slow the economy down or the consumption or any of that stuff because we're not involved. Like our part is driving the truck, flipping the burgers, and serving the beers. Like that's our part of the economy. But we don't participate in the economy with the increase in aggregate demand and the consumption. That's the top 20% of people. They're doing that. Right? And so if there was a recession from the slowdown in consumption that creates, that downward effect, that would come from the top 20% of people slowing down their consumption, their expansion, their growth, and that's not happening. That's actually they're increasing theirs. And this is the reason why we feel the pain so much, and we're wondering why the hell they don't do something about it. Is because there's really nothing they can do. I mean, they're going to eventually force feed UBI or something into us because they're going to have to produce a consumer, right? I mean, if they try to produce an asset holder, it would take time, but I mean, I guess it could happen. They're going to attempt to do it with these, Trump baby wallets or whatever. I don't know. What are they? What is the common name that they're using for this now? I don't know. I've been calling it Trump babies, but that sounds kind of weird. All these kids who get this, $1,000 deposit into their accounts, this is to kick off the capitalist mindset, right? $1,000 probably won't do much for an individual. Every single individual who has one of those at once, I guarantee you, when they start coming into their adulthood and getting those checks and deploying them into the economy, it will have an impact. But it's not like they're going to get a ton of money from that $1,000 by itself. However, if their parents, which if they were smart from the very beginning, which not all of them are going to put some sort of return or put some money towards that account that can grow over time, it would grow quite significantly. But to encourage people to do that, that isn't easy. If you kick it off with $1,000, then it might be a little easier to get them to contribute to it. But to get like the average person to start on their own and make that happen, it's most likely not going to take place. So you can try and create this idea of producing an asset holder by like literally from the birth, give them $1,000, and then hopefully their parents will be smart enough to continue on adding into that. But it's going to be far easier, and that's going to be difficult because it takes good decision making, right? Good money making decision making capabilities, and most people just don't have that. If they did, they wouldn't be poor, they wouldn't need the money. What is going to be far easier for the banking system and the government to do is to produce a consumer by literally just handing money over to them. There you go. Just go spend it. See you guys. And if they were smart on their own, they would pay off debt, or right, if they didn't have to pay off debt, move that into a cash flowing asset, not to go and spend it into the economy, but they will just go and spend it into the economy. Much like as soon as those kids turn 18, most of them will just blow it. I mean, it'll be gone within a year. Most likely, parents will not be contributing any more to those accounts. And then they won't be worth that much anyway. Going to bed. Thanks, Simon. It has been a good talk as usual. Well, thank you so much. What is that? Mari? What is it? Marty? Mary? I can't read the name. Mary. Mary York. Well, thank you so much for being here. Have a good night. All right. It's just a trade of pain and misery now, pain and misery later. Yeah. Simon, still have a hard time wrapping my mind around the top 20% doing the majority of the consumption. Is this from the new vehicle purchases, dining purchases, and home and frequent vacations? Yes. Absolutely, it is. It's from all that stuff. See, anytime you ever see anybody out there who's spending money, right? Those are consumers. And it was funny because mom actually brought it up to me the other day. She was just like, I went to, and I could see all these people and they're spending all this money and all this other stuff. And how is it that they have this money? And I'm like, Mom, all you see is the consumers. You're not seeing the people who are sitting at their apartment with no money and nothing to do, right? I mean, that's where like everyone was like, well, the restaurant was full. It was like, yeah, those it was full of the consumers, but what it's not full of is in like you're not physically viewing the people who are sitting in their apartments with no money and nothing to do. That's you can't you don't physically see those people. The physical people that you see are the consumers who go outside and are spending money, right? And it doesn't mean that all those people who are spending are part of the 20%. I mean, just because an individual goes outside and spends money doesn't mean that they're a consumer of the 20%. Going out there and buying, you know, a pop at the store or something like that, I mean, yeah, it makes you a consumer, but it's not like you're consuming this insane amount, right? So going out and spending $10 a day, that is nothing comparatively to somebody who's spending $5,000 a day. And they're doing that regularly. And that's like scary to think that there's people out there who do that, but that is very, very, very much a real fact that there is groups of people, and not just a small group, but entire society of the people out there who spend that kind of money. I have a hard time even conceptualizing the idea of spending $5,000 a day for more than a week. Like I would like what in the hell? Like I couldn't even think of things to buy anymore, you know? But yet $5,000 just flies right out the window every single day for these people. That's insane to think, right? I mean, like that much money? Holy cow. Through cars, through spending, through entourage, through whatever they got going on, man. They got like there's money just flying out the window all day long. And that kind of consumption is so mind-boggling to an individual who has to go and earn a paycheck. They don't even understand it. They don't understand like how it is that somebody could even live that sort of existence. Yeah. The top 20% of household incomes is it's like trying to compare, here it is like when I thought I like making $100,000, I thought a long time ago when I was a kid or something, making $100,000 would just seem like just such an insane amount of money. Like to me, it would have been everything. You would have had all the stuff. You would have had cars and houses and vacations and retirement, and there would have been no problems in your life, and you would have just been so happy with everything that's going on. And then one year I made 100,000, like between my wife and I, we made $100,000, and I was thinking, dang, that isn't that much anymore, is it? Like, it just like I mean, between the house, between the kids, between everything that going on and trying to you know and all the other things that like it's like 100 grand ain't that much money. And then when I was a kid, it just seemed like it was all the money in the world. It seemed like it was so much. And so when you hear like how the new poverty line is $140,000 or something like that, I laugh. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I can understand maybe if you lived in San Francisco, it would be that. But really, even $140,000 doesn't seem that much anymore, right? So I can only assume that when people are thinking of being a consumer, they're thinking about when they go down and buy this here bottle of water, or when it is they go and get a new cell phone or something like that. But there's people out there who consume in such a way that it would boggle the people's minds in how like they would spend in a matter of hours what somebody would make in an entire month. Doing without care too, without any consideration. All right. The most important thing to the younger generation is how many tattoos they get. Yeah. Is that really big now? I mean, I know like there was a time there when tattoos were really like popular, but strippers are gonna have QR codes on their bikinis. Strippers don't wear bikinis. All right. The most important thing to we already read that. The top 20% of form another planet is possible to relate. All right. We call these people women. All right. Uh, all right, Simon, there you are moving into luxurious drinking liquid out of some can that you can purchase at the store. You should be drinking water out of the tap. You're moving to luxuries is concerning. Yeah, I know. Like the 35-cent bottle of water and the bubbly that I got 2 for 1 on sale that cost like I think another 35 cents or something like that. So my luxurious experience of 70 cents worth of water is, yeah, I can see where you're getting at. I'm a horrible person. Well, so much for the poor. See ya. Heading on to the other side of the wedge. Mmm. Ah, it tastes good. I don't know why when they purchase assets, it makes the smack Raymond go up, but the dose we call the smack Raymond evidence. I have no idea what you're talking about. It's horrible. Uh, you should be drinking from the hose outside the house. Ew, dude, you know how horrible hose water tastes? All right. Simon drinks water the way I drink my Coronas. Well, I learned how to drink these waters from drinking Coronas, so I totally get that. Hey, Simon, there won't really be a crash because our society masters will throw good money after bad like they've done since the 2008 and not allow it. Well, and I think really honestly, like, before the economy would crash because the working class individual who didn't work would then crash the economy on account that they were no longer a consumer, right? But if they're not the consumer, then they're not the concern anymore. And so crashing the economy probably won't take place even if all these people were to lose their jobs. Like, you know, the hardest the if everybody started to lose their jobs, then the rich people wouldn't have anybody to flip the burger, right? And so they're going to end up paying a lot more to flip the burger. And this is the unfortunate circumstances that we now face is that people are going to be demanding like, $30 an hour to flip a burger because that's what they're essentially going to need in order to have any kind of existence, you know. And so it's not like, it's not like flipping burgers is worth $30 an hour or something like that. But essentially, if you don't get it, then there's no point in doing it. Uh, isn't water free if you ask for it? I think it happens at the gas station. Well, water is free right now because it's falling from the sky, you know? Trump will buy the property stocks before the big baby bump happens. He will be the winner on this deal. He's probably shorting it right now. to prepare the road. I wish I knew the right stocks to pick. Is he even going to be alive when those people are turning 18? All right. Earn a ridiculous multiple. Enjoy ridiculous consideration. They can flip their own burgers. That was a good one. They can flip their own burgers. No, they can't. They can't even touch the. They can't even touch the meat. You know, they can't touch the raw burger, man. They can't take the time to go down to the grocery store to get the burger to put into a patty to put onto the grill. They can't take the time to do that. That would cost them too much money. They have to pay somebody else to do that. That's what's scary about it. Rich people are so rich now that it would literally cost them to go down, it would cost them more to go down to the store to buy a burger, to make a patty, to fry it up themselves in order to have a hamburger. It would cost them too much money to do that. It would be cheaper to pay somebody else to. Isn't that crazy? All right. All right. Get back. I'm losing phone deal here. God, I suck at this. Good old technical savvy. This is the way you do this stuff right here. All right. Aha. Stay. Thank you, uneducated guy. Yeah, you bet. Yeah, time, return on investment, leverage is fun. I got 93% beef here, regular, for $5 a pound. All right, reminds me of the Waffle House story where customers were cooking their own food because the last only employee gave up and walked out. Yeah, I actually heard about that. What was it, like a restaurant where like this, like essentially the customers got up and started working the restaurant? It's like some of them knew like the restaurant industry and they're like, hey man, we're all hungry, we all want this stuff. So they actually just got up and started like working it, making the restaurant happen and serving all this food out and stuff like that. And I thought, man, that is so awesome. Right? That is like one of the coolest stories that I had ever heard, is that everybody just got frustrated with this job and walked out, and the customers were like, you know what, we still want to eat, and so let's make this happen, man, let's cook the food and serve the food and make the food, man. Slipping here in the Suburban. The Suburban driver's seat has like the guy must. I don't think the guy who owned him must have been. I don't think he was a very big dude, but like the seat is crushed. It's like big hole, so you just like slip into it down into this hole. All right. Love Waffle House fights. To work there, you have to know how to fight. It's in the interview. All right. My biggest worry with buying silver is not being able to sell it later. What do you do? Oh, that part. Yeah, that I guess like if you're new to the game and new to the network, then that would be a very concerning thing, and I totally get that. Like you're absolutely right. You get it, and now I want out. How do I get it to? And that can be very concerning, especially if you have like a lot. Start small. Go meet I mean, almost every town has a pawn shop or a coin dealer or maybe even a jeweler or generally somebody, like maybe not every town or a town that's fairly close to you has some sort of dealer of silver, right? Go and meet that dealer. Go and talk to them, learn their name, have a conversation about silver with them, buying bullion, buy a single piece off of them, something very simple, American Silver Eagle, a generic bullion, something that you can then, just make a purchase with them and ask them, if I was to sell this back to you, how much would you pay for it? Right. And make that deal with them right there on the spot, to say, how would this work? That way, right? The next time you come down, you say it again, it's just like, how much are you buying the spot price or how much are you buying under spot or however that deal works. When you build up that network, you're going to build up that confidence that you're going to be able to unload that silver in a reasonable timeline. Now, I wouldn't stop with just them. I would find other people, like your friends, other stores, other places that you can unload the silver, because that's the building of the network, right? Once you have built up that network, it becomes really easy. Like for me, I like for this truck, for example, like I had 100 ounces of silver. I offered to trade it. I was like, hey man, I'll trade you the Suburban for 100 ounces of silver. And at the time it was $30 an ounce, right? So it was, quite a few months ago. And the guy who had the Suburban said, no, I do not want the silver. That's no problem. So I went to another buddy of mine who had money, and I said, hey man, I need $3,000 to buy this Suburban. I have the $3,000, but I don't want to give it up. I would much rather hold on to that so that I can have the cash on hand in case of emergencies, case of anything that comes up. I just don't want to give up the 3 grand. Is there any way that you would loan me 3 grand and I'll give you this silver for collateral? Right? He said, absolutely. So we made a deal. I gave him 10 ounce bars of silver at $300 a bar. Right? And I told him I will buy back each one of these bars for $330. So he's making a 10% interest on the loan, which is a lot, but really on a private loan, that's not that much, And I mean, we're talking $300 on a $3,000 loan. Makes a Suburban $3,300. I get to pay it off over time. It was reasonable for me so that I could hold on to the cash and still get the Suburban using my silver as collateral to get the loan and then buy back the silver bars at that 10% interest. So to me, that ended up working out incredibly well. Now, I bought back, I offered up the deal to a couple of the guys at work who I knew were not into silver but wanted to be, so I gave them that option. I said, hey man, check it out. I got the guy here who loaned me the money. I used the silver as collateral. I'm supposed to buy those bars back from him. I'll tell you what, you can buy a bar or two from him if you want for that cheaper price. You're going to get under spot price, because by the time we were buying those bars back, the silver spot had moved up to about $35. So now here it is. I'm buying my silver back, right, at $330 for this 10 ounce bar, so $33 an ounce, and silver spot price had moved to 35. So now I'm buying my silver back under spot price. I even told the guy, I said, "Do you sure you don't want to keep it?" He says, "No, I want the money back." I said, "All right, we're doing the deal at this." He says, "Okay." So now I'm buying silver back from, like, essentially my own silver back under spot price. And when it came down to the very last bar, I offered it to him. I said, "Do you want to keep that last one?" He said, "I would. Can I?" And I said, "Absolutely. You can have that last one." I didn't buy it back, so I bought back like 6 of the bars. So essentially, I traded, 40 ounces of silver and, however much I ended up paying for it, then 18, whatever it was, $1,900 or something. And that's how I worked that silver deal. That was the last one I did. I've bought several vehicles using silver. So once you build up that network, you don't really think about, you're not that concerned about it anymore. Like your concern level of liquidating it or what you're going to do with it, it really drops. But without the network, then it would be very worrisome, right? You'd be like, oh man, where do I go? Who do I do? What do I do? And then also understand, like, as long as you're not like desperate for it right away, the money, then there's all kinds of places that you can send it to online. There's a lot of online dealers that will buy silver back from you. I personally, I have never sold silver to a dealer. I've never gone that direction with it. I've always purchased, and then if I ever unloaded any, it was in, amongst private, individuals, not at a store. But like there's a mint here in my area in Oregon. It's called Monarch Precious Metals. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. They do some really cool looking pours. They're like almost like a hand pour, like they poured it into like a sand mold or something. It's very old ingot looking stuff. I love it. The Monarch Precious Metals, I think, are just fun. But what's cool about it is that they will also buy their own stuff. Like if it's a Monarch Precious Metals mint, then they will buy their own stuff back. At least they used to at spot price. So that's pretty cool. Like, you can find a mint that you can buy a bunch of stuff from that will buy it back, like their own stuff at a spot price. If you can work a deal like that, then maybe, kind of work that angle so you feel a little bit more comfortable about what it is that you are buying and what you have and who you can unload it to. So that's just one. I'm not trying to promote Monarch, but I'm promoting. I mean, go check them out; they're cool. But I'm not getting paid to say that or anything. Wow, look at all these comments. You guys are awesome. All right. Can't go wrong buying precious metals. You really can't. See, there's the thing. Like, if there's three positions in which that if you have no idea what to do, number one, pay off your debt. Like if you have debt, just that's it. Don't even worry about investing. Just pay your debt off because that's the greatest investment that you can go to, especially high yielding credit card or anything else. Just pay your debts, right? So simple enough. If you're looking to invest and you don't know where to go and you have debts, boom, you got the easiest investment in the entire world. Pay your debts, right? um, so after you paid off your debt, precious metals, right? If you have no savings whatsoever, like you don't have anything in the bank, you don't really have a stock portfolio, you don't have anything like that going on, precious metals, go down buy a silver bullion, right? Once you have that silver bullion, you're going to want to start stacking them up. You'll buy one once a month, once every other week, once every couple of months because you can't afford it that 1 month or whatever, but just keep stacking that up. Pretty soon you have a savings in precious metals, right? So if you're debt free and you have a savings in precious metals, it's something unique that is outside of a third party claim, that third party risk. And it's generally not something that you're easily going to spend. So it's not like, having a $20 bill, sitting in, your wallet just waiting for a place to go. Generally, you have to take effort in order to spend your silver. So for the most part, it turns into a fairly decent savings that you can just like, stick away into the corner somewhere. And then after that, real estate. Like if you have real estate, then just put your money into real estate. So if you have debt or you have real estate, you almost have like a no-brainer. Like if you don't know where to go with investment, just that's it. Just pay off your debts, and once that's done, pay into real estate because you cannot go wrong by making a house payment. Like you just can't. There's no way that you can go wrong making a house payment. Whether you're making an advance payment or you're paying off the principal, there's nothing you can do that would be a wrong move by making a house payment. So again, if you're an investor or looking to invest and you don't know what to do and you have debt, pay off your debt, right? If you don't have a savings, buy some silver. If you have a house or a mortgage, just make house payments. That's easy. You don't even have to think about anything at all when you have those three positions to go to. Right? After that, you can start getting creative. But if you have those things going on, until you have alleviated your debt and your mortgage out there, then everything else is really secondary to it. Really, I mean, yeah, having a decent stock portfolio so that you can have a retirement and be able to still make a house payment and stuff like that and live in the house. I can understand being in a position like that. But if you were completely debt free, 100% and owned a property on top of it, it really like you can have your income be pretty low and at least still have a decent existence, as long as you're making that tax payment and dealing with the maintenance on the house. Alrighty. Are we done here, guys? You want to keep going? Well, what are we? Almost 3 hours into this? Yeah, we're 3 hours into this live stream. You guys good? Did we fix the world's problems yet? All nighter, thank you, man. Thank you so much for being here. It was a long night. I feel like it's going to continue to go up, and I want to get in now, although it's high. I feel it's going to go higher to get closer to the GSR, but I'm on the outside. Huh. If you want to buy silver and gold, contact reputable dealer. Yeah, and that's true. You definitely want to get in. I mean, there's some out there that are just really well known, and then I imagine there's probably a lot of shady people. But once you get into dealing with some of the better companies out there, and you make a few deals with them, again, the confidence grows and the relationship grows, and yeah. Use debt to buy another house. Absolutely. Elevated life. I totally agree. Only some rule when crossing international lines makes it tougher to confiscate considering money. I'm still at my attorney's. Oh, wow, you're working a late one tonight, bud. Oh, good old all-nighter, man. I tell you, all-nighter and Brody, they put a lot of time and effort into this channel, and I really appreciate it. They help keep the comments clean, spam free, keep the direction, going well, especially when it comes to like the trolls and stuff like that. Having a couple of really good moderators for this channel I mean, I cannot thank you guys enough. I mean, it's made this so much easier and pleasurable to do. So, I owe you guys. I really do. I owe you. Very interesting. What about buying foreign currencies? Yeah, I mean, I think if somebody's into it in the FX trades, like, you can really do pretty well, especially with some of the carry trades where, essentially like back in the day when Japan was offering up really low, loans that you can then take to the United States and get a return on their debt. So like these carry trades where you basically, taking money from, like, they called it carry trades because it was essentially going to like this window had dollars, this window had gold, this window had whatever currency, and so you take your money over to this one, change it over to American dollars, get it over into gold, take the gold and then take it over to the Japanese, and then the Japanese dollar, take it back to the United States, and then just do this weird carry trade between these two. Just basically just take it in this path, and you're able to siphon a little bit of money off of doing these. Those carry trades are really popular. People get really good at it and watching them and knowing how to do that. So FX trading and those type of things. I mean, yeah, yeah. If you can figure it out and how to get that money out of it, go for it, man. I don't have any problems with it. Like, I mean, I don't have any problems with anybody doing anything. I'm just like, to me personally, that's not the direction in which that I would go to try and do it. But that's not my game. Playing in the currencies like that. Yes, Simon. It's called the forex market, currency trading. Silver is outperforming Bitcoin. Wow, wow. The central bankers are a cabal of bankers. The infinite, the inflate their currencies together. You cannot escape this. Yeah, but then you can also use it as a feature, right? See, like, if you don't like it, then it's not going to work for you. But if you do like how it works, or at least not necessarily like how it works, because you don't have to like it or hate it. That's the point, right? You just have to understand what it is that's happening so that you can deal with it. It's not a matter of a love or like, or hate, love or hate. It doesn't matter. That part is inconsequential. Like, they are, these ruthless cabal. They just, screw it all up. They just print up all this money and deteriorate the currency and all that other stuff. And like, that's true, right? But then we got to figure out what it is that we need to do about it, because we can't change that behavior. Like, you'll never, like, the biggest frustrating thing that you will ever experience in your life is trying to get somebody else to do something you want them to do. Right? Like, because they just don't. Like, even if they wanted to do it the moment you want them to do it, then they don't. you know and that's where, like, a lot of times it's the ego that really fouls us up. So it's just better to understand they are going to do that because that's just the way they are, and then not to love or hate them for it. It's just the way it is, and then you got to figure out how to be part of that and deal with it, because if you don't, you're going to fall behind. And we can blame them for that, saying, hey, I'm going to fall behind because of you guys. That's your own fault, right? Because it isn't fair. Life isn't fair, and it's not going to be fair. And that's important to understand, because that way you can deal with it in a better, more appropriate fashion. Can you answer my question I posted above, Ritter? How far is it? How far is it up there, Ritter? Dude, I think it's too far. I can't find it. Sorry, man. Let me see. Maybe it was closer. Any answer? I don't see it, man. Yeah, I'd love to, but I don't see it. Oh, wait, is that it? Oh, I found it. Okay. Golden chopsticks. How can you tell if there are 100% gold without cracking them and have to check them? Do people bring their own scale to buy silver at a pawn shop? What about buying silver from Robin Hood? Okay, cool. So whether or not it's fake silver, that's a good question. Now, here's the thing about silver and gold when it comes to fake silver and gold, especially when it comes to gold. There's very few things on this planet that are going to be that size, that shape, and weigh that much. All right. Like there are ways you can, tungsten and there's some other stuff in there, but very, very few items are going to be that size and weigh that much. Right? So that's generally one of the better ways to just recognize that you probably have something that's fairly close to being like certified by just being the right shape, right size, and the right weight, because that's hard to duplicate. Now, there are ways of making that happen, especially on the bigger, heavier bars. Then you could figure out ways to fill them and do other things like that. That makes it a little more difficult. But generally, those smaller pieces, those ones are a little harder to do that with. But it can happen, and they do that, right? So, understanding that kind of part of it, and the same thing with silver. Now, other things that you can do to kind of test it is to do things like a magnet, like a rare earth magnet on things. This will generally test for some of the magnetic qualities that are in the impurities of the added weight that they're trying to put into whatever piece that they're trying to fake. That is again is harder in gold, and then to do that in silver isn't maybe now that silver's going up in price, it might make it a little bit more valuable to do it, but it really just wasn't cost effective to try and duplicate silver in that fashion because you just didn't get enough out of it. Um, kind of understanding those little principles like that. There are certain mints that have done something that is very creative, and that is that they Sunshine Mint had, I don't know how the hell they did this, but they etched into the back of their coin, and you can't even really tell anything about it other than it looks kind of like just a little matte spot, like a little dull, like it's not shiny in an area on the back of the bullion. And then if you take like it's almost like a decoder, screen essentially, and you hover it over the top of the coin, the word valid appears on the coin itself through the screen that you're looking at. It just looks like a little piece of glass too. So basically you can use that to verify that coin that it because it has that, that verification essentially that patented emblem or whatever that's in there that comes up valid when you hold that screen over it. So it's basically saying that that is a coin that came from the Sunshine Mint that is valid. So those are pretty good ways of going about it for the simplest, kind of fashion. From there, then you can start going into acid tests and different things like that to try and test and see what it is that's you really have. Buying from a reputable dealer, that's the best way, right? If you're buying from some person off the street, then you're taking your chances that you might have something plated or faked or whatever. But if you're going through a reputable dealer, like you're going through SD Bullion or something of that nature, then you're most likely not going to ever find any kind of fakery going on through that. Like those guys are popular. They want to stay in business. They don't want to rip you off, right? I mean, I, maybe the very last time they want to do that, but they don't want to do that to stay in business. Does anyone here trade futures? All right. Reap, the best way to keep yourself from going into luxuries. Huh. The neighbor only smokes half the cigarettes and I smoke the other half, saves me a fortune. Always buy from reputable dealer. Yeah. All right, tasting like. All right, moving on. From going into luxuries refried. All right, you guys are awesome, but we've been out here for over 3 hours. It's great that we have 175 people who still watching that. It's crazy. I mean, we've been going on for a while here. 218 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. You guys are so awesome. And the $19.90 in super chats. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate all the support for the channel. You guys really encourage me a lot to keep going, keep putting out the video, putting out the content, and reaching out to other platforms. A lot of you have now seen me over on X. I've been doing a lot more posting over there. And the Patreon account. Thank you so much for everybody who's joined in on the Patreon as well, where we are breaking down the older speeches, some of the first original ones that we were doing from the credible threat theory, bringing those speeches up to date with new ideas of what it is that's happening within the economy, and then going back over those speeches again to take in some of the ideas of what it is that they were thinking and the outcomes that we received from that line of thinking. It's a great way to understand what's going on with monetary policy. So I really encourage anybody who hasn't become a Patreon member to, maybe join in on the Patreon or the members only here on YouTube, where we break down the more current speeches from the Federal Reserve. So the most current speeches I try to break down here on the members only on YouTube, and then those past speeches, some of the writings that I'm doing, I'm getting that done on Patreon. X has been going pretty well. I'm posting a few, just finding some articles and learning to get comfortable being on X. I know it's really like it's a major platform for a lot of people out there, and I've been encouraged to try and hang out there a little bit more. So I'm gonna try and do that. Maybe do some posting and comments and the whole X thing. But anyway, just branching out there because YouTube isn't really loving the uneducated economist that much. The algorithm is pretty much dead on it. The ad revenue has been hacked to pieces on it. And again, like I mean, I want to say that I don't get concerned about it, but it is kind of concerning, when you go from being able to make some decent amount of money on YouTube to essentially feeling like, it's just like it's almost over in a sense, not really, but kind of in that way. It's like, well, maybe this is a good chance for me to start branching out there into other areas of the internet on social medias, and maybe share a different way of being, or figure out a different way of sharing the information in order to, not only expand what it is that I'm doing here, but then also grow as a person myself and how it is that I can deliver the message. So hopefully, and not hopefully, it's all a good thing, and it's awesome. And I really appreciate everybody who is supporting me and all this that we're doing here. I like to think that people are getting a good value out of the channel. And I know that some people who have emailed me and messaged me and thanked me personally, I know they're getting a lot out of it. And to be honest, knowing that I'm getting just a few people who have been touched by the information, who feel like they have bettered their life from it, that's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I love it. Especially some of those people who come to me and say, man, I haven't drank in like 6 months because I've been watching your videos. And I'm thinking, dude, that right there is probably one of the coolest feelings and things to have happen for this channel, is to have somebody come and say that, because that's something that I never thought that I would have been able to do, is to share my story and then have somebody come up and say, dude, thank you for sharing that story, because it's encouraged me to now, pursue a sober life and to start chasing the excellence. And to hear somebody come to me and say, man, thank you for doing that, that's the entire world right there. That does it for me. All right, you guys are awesome, but I'm going to go to bed now. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.